Chapter 433. Diwei said this, but when the main course of the dining hall was served, Diwei adopted the posture of sweeping away the clouds like a whirlwind. He buried his head in his plate, unwilling to lift it up. He had ample reason for this. My body is growing, so I must ingest sufficient nutrients. Even if it's a bit excessive, I can digest it through training. As he spoke, the kid even patted Worker Zhai's arm. That's why I'm quite grateful to you, Godfather. Whether it's a thunder hawk or a swift, it's always good to have a place to digest the accumulated food. Worker Zhai had to hold his forehead at Luo Nan's aged appearance. Luckily, the kid soon threw himself into a new plate, and Worker Zhai had the opportunity to talk to Luo Nan about other things. I've tested the move you spoke of last time. It really is effective. My soul strength and interference power have both grown. Huh? Luo Nan didn't react at all. Worker Zhai simply spoke the truth when he saw Luo Nan like this. He looked at the cup of water in front of him with rapt attention. 2 seconds later, a drop of water the size of a fingernail rose from the cup, hovering above the rim. Luo Nan finally understood. Wasn't this the effect of the condensation ring he spoke to Papercut about when they were waiting last time? It's done. Before Worker Zhai could finish speaking, the drop of water above the rim of the cup collapsed and scattered. Worker Zhai's face was a bit pale, and a layer of sweat seeped from his forehead. This technique clearly consumed a lot of energy for him. Of course, 10 days ago, he wouldn't even be able to touch the edge of this move with his unawakened level. Worker Zhai wiped away his sweat. In a non-combat state, it can last for approximately 1 seconds. As for the combat state, there was no need to talk about it. 2 seconds of preparation time was practically meaningless in actual combat. Hold on. Let me think. The Sansho training Luo Nan received consumed too much mental energy. Chatting normally was fine, but he needed to compose himself and refocus his attention if he wanted to talk business. Half a minute later, he said, the volume of this condensation ring is too large. Its diameter is nearly 0.3 millimeters. It needs to be a bit smaller to increase the stability of the structure. Shui Lei poked Luo Nan's arm when he saw the two begin their discussion. The dining hall's partitions were pretty good, so they didn't need to worry about other people seeing them. Don't forget that the kid Diwei was right next to them. Diwei was very sensitive about such things. He immediately glared at Shui Lei. Isn't it just extraordinary power? What's there to hide? Shui Lei let out and choked. Diwei disdainfully said, it's only you young ladies and young masters in the city who bury your faces in the sand like ostriches. As long as it's a vagrant who has fought in the wilderness, who wouldn't know? As he spoke, the kid pouted at Worker Zhai. If it weren't for the fact that he has this kind of ability, I wouldn't have liked him. Worker Zhai couldn't take it anymore and slapped the back of the little guy's head. Don't talk nonsense. Diwei immediately glared at him, but was defeated by Worker Zhai's gaze. Mumbling, he buried his face in his plate and continued to dig in. Luo Nan wasn't particularly surprised by this sort of thing. He just sighed with emotion. In a certain sense, the so-called high wall between the inner world and the normal world is as thin as a piece of paper. Shui Lei, on the other hand, was stimulated by this piece of information. His train of thought jumped to another level. Worker Zhai, you want the little guy to learn martial arts because you want him to enter this circle? Yes, this will depend on his aptitude. Naturally, it would be ideal if he could gain a comprehensive understanding of the world. But in this case, building a foundation is extremely important. He can't go and mess around. Worker Zhai nodded in agreement. This is indeed the case, but I don't know if he has the talent in this area. What path he will take in the future is still undecided. I'm not afraid of that. With the guidance of a famous teacher and his willingness to put in effort, he'll more or less know the difference in talent in 3 to 5 months. Nothing will be delayed. Shui Lei could be said to be more than half an expert in this area. Just like this, the two opened up a new topic of conversation. Worker Zhai forgot to talk about the condensation ring. He really did care a lot about his adopted son. Luo Nan was tossed aside. He simply learned from Di Weiwu, burying his head in food and replenishing his energy. On the other side, Di Weiwu looked like he was full. He looked over with wide eyes. His gaze was completely within Luo Nan's senses. After being stared at for a long time, Luo Nan felt uncomfortable. He raised his head and asked, "What's wrong? It seems like you're quite capable." "I'm alright." "How do you compare to him?" Di Weiguo secretly pointed at worker Zhai. "Your adopted father?" "Oh, we each have our strong points. Worker Zhai has been teaching me engineering all this time." Di Weiguo directly interrupted, "In other words, you're stronger than him in terms of extraordinary strength?" Were kids these days all this straightforward? Di Weiwu noticed Luo Nan's gaze and glanced at worker Zhai. He saw this enthusiastic adopted father earnestly asking for guidance from Shuelei. He was just short of taking notes. Di Weiwu felt that speaking too bluntly wasn't good, so he simply walked around the table and sat next to Luo Nan. "Hey, if you're really capable, then teach me. You just said that extraordinary strength isn't that amazing." "Bullshit. You misinterpreted my words. Do you have any sincerity?" Luo Nan continued to tease him, "You speak vulgarities the moment you open your mouth. Where's your sincerity? It's fine if you don't want to teach me. I don't care. Also, it's my fault for speaking vulgarities. I'll apologize to you." Pfft. Di Weiwu feigned magnanimity, but unfortunately, he couldn't hold it in. Luo Nan couldn't help but grin at this honest kid. He casually rubbed worker Zhai's head, "Teaching you really isn't a big deal, but I'm afraid that I won't teach you well. Especially when it comes to laying the foundation. You still need to find a good teacher. Since you have the skill, why can't you teach me well?" Di Weiwu finally asked a childish question that suited his age. Luo Nan wanted to answer seriously, but he felt that it was too complicated. He thought for a bit and said, "Well, teaching students requires a lot of energy. I'm still studying. I have to work. There are many other things. I'm often distracted. I'm not focused." So he was tossed around miserably today. Di Weiwu blinked his eyes. "Not focused? I can teach you this. What's with that look in your eyes? You don't believe me, right? I learned my true skills from Dean Wan. All you need to do is follow the method I taught you and seriously observe the precepts for a period of time. Attention, concentration, and so on. It's absolutely this." He stuck up his thumb and wiggled it in front of Luo Nan's eyes. "Dean Wan?" Luo Nan finally couldn't hold it in anymore at this time. "The Dean Wan you're talking about, is he the one in the recycling stratum of the Forest Wall District? Is he the one who often gives people? The one who teaches?" "Huh. You know?" Di Weiwu was shocked. "I have two friends who have received guidance from Dean Wan. I don't know if you recognize them or not. One is surnamed Xia, and the other. The one with the surname Du is a sissy, right?" Di Weiwu laughed. "Ha. They've been going to the institute quite often recently. They've donated quite a bit of money. Thanks to their blessings, I'll be able to live a bit more comfortably over there in the future." Chapter 434. Children's senses and emotions changed very quickly. Di Weiwu originally didn't like Luo Nan very much. But now that they had a common topic of conversation, Dean Wan, and their positions were relatively close, Di Weiwu's attitude was completely different with just a few words. Luo Nan actually wanted to ask about the creation order, but he swallowed his words in the end. From his perspective, it was better for children to stay away from religion. Even though the little fellow had been deeply influenced by Dean Wan, he still wasn't a little saint who talked about the teachings of the creation order. This was good enough. It wasn't just Di Weiwu. Du Yong and Xie Junping didn't seem to be brainwashed. It was for this reason that Luo Nan had a pretty good impression of the creation order. The only thing he wasn't sure about right now was whether or not worker Zhai knew about the creation order. Worker Zhai was a bit surprised when he found an opportunity to ask, Dean Wan is an ability user? Or a member of the Order? You don't know? I've only met him twice. We didn't talk for long. I just remember that he was nimble with his hands. Some of the handicrafts he made were of a very high level. Some of the models had outstanding structures, proportions, and precision. Really? Luo Nan had a pensive look. Could it be that the so-called creation was just a literal meaning and not the meaning of the creator? Worker Zhai had a good impression of Dean Wan. I think there shouldn't be a problem. Dean Wan has a good personality. Di Weiwu, who had been eavesdropping, shouted, "Of course there's no problem with Dean Wan. Are you guys spies? Why are you asking so many questions?" Luo Nan laughed. "No, I'm just curious. People in our circle talk about all sorts of things, but we're all connected. Isn't it fate?" The little fellow was quite satisfied with this explanation. He patted Luo Nan on the shoulder, pretending to be generous. "There's definitely fate. Actually, if you guys are interested in Dean Wan, you can go talk to him. You don't need to pick a time. Tonight is fine. You guys can send me to the orphanage. I'll live there." Di Weiwu felt a bit guilty when he said this. Actually, the main reason for his proposal was that he didn't want to return to the Trigate district, a place where he couldn't find any fun. Luo Nan, Shui Lei, and Worker Zhai exchanged glances. The restaurant was located on the west side of the River Wu district. It wouldn't take much time to get there. Half a minute later, Di Weiwu's suggestion took effect. Both the host and the guest enjoyed the meal. Di Weiwu, who claimed to be temperate, went out holding his stomach. After leaving the restaurant, they walked a short distance to the nearest bus stop. The orphanage was located in the Forest Wall District's recycling layer. The centipedes normally wouldn't go there, so only low-altitude public transportation was on the way. Di Weiwu took advantage of this time to instill Luo Nan with the superiority of the concept of upholding the precepts. As long as you can persevere, it won't be long before you'll discover that you're super efficient at doing things. Your memory will be excellent, and you'll be able to multitask. Oh. I'm not lying to you. There were a few times when Dean Wan talked to a few of us at the same time. Everyone had a different topic, but he never messed up his answers. Of course, that's an even more powerful technique. I think it's called coordination. Overall planning. Luo Nan was a bit moved. He was faced with a myriad of things to worry about. What he lacked the most right now was the ability to plan and arrange. He always felt that he didn't have enough time. When he did one thing, he would be dragged down by another. His concentration was severely lacking. There was no need for Gym Master Shou to lecture him. He was already tired of it. Luo Nan's wristband vibrated as he was thinking. Someone called. Luo Nan's eyelids jumped when he saw the caller's name. It matched his terrible premonition. Moya opened her mouth and said, "Nanster, remember to tell him when you get home. I won't be going home tonight." Luo Nan quivered when he heard this. He instinctively raised his voice, "Go find Mo Peng. I won't be going home tonight either." "Where will you be staying if you're not going home?" "I'm in the River Wu district." "Where do you think I'll be staying?" "Blue Bay?" "Then you should go home. I'm commandeering this place tonight." Luo Nan was so angry that his teeth hurt. He gnashed his teeth and said, "Moya, don't go too far. I really want to leave you a bedding, but there are a few beauties here." "They aren't willing." Someone suddenly came over and shouted, "Who said that?" "If you're a handsome guy, then come over. Big sis will love you." "Get lost." Moya pushed her flirtatious friend to the side. She chuckled and asked Luo Nan, "Are you coming over?" "I'm going to stay at a hotel. In any case, I absolutely won't go home and take the blame for you." Luo Nan directly hung up the phone. Actually, he let out a breath of relief. He was really worried that a man's voice would be heard in the background. Moya's heart had really gone wild after taking a stroll around the Manching Music Festival. She hadn't spent more than 5 days at home in the half a month that she had been back in Xia City. She spent most of her time outside, making her ant hopping mad. Unfortunately, she had already graduated to adulthood. She possessed the ability to act, and she always had her own opinions. Her family couldn't control her even if they wanted to. It must be said that Imoya's personality and temperament were trustworthy, but the underground music circle was famous for being chaotic. Luo Nan's heart twitched, not to mention his aunt and uncle. He was afraid that his cousin would fall into that chaotic circle. If this continued, Luo Nan would need to mobilize the society's channels to properly investigate. Well, this was another troublesome side issue. Luo Nan unconsciously sighed. Di Weiwu prodded him from the side. Your sister? Yeah. Their relationship isn't too good? Oh, you can't say that. Luo Nan shot a glance at him. You little brat, what are you trying to do with your bemoaning and pitying face? Di Weiwu patted Luo Nan. He was limited in size, so he could only pat the crook of Luo Nan's arm. You need to have a good relationship with your family. Don't get into fights so easily. Luo Nan's first reaction was to laugh, but he instantly thought that this cheerful and arrogant kid in front of him was an orphan who had lost all of his family. His smile unconsciously froze on his face. Di Weiwu didn't care at all. He casually changed the topic. Hey, look over there. It looks like another Thunder Falcon dojo. They were already standing at the bus stop right now. A large video of the Thunder Falcon dojo was displayed on an advertisement in the commercial center across the street. The visual effects were quite impactful. Worker Zhai led to another train of thought. The Thunder Falcon dojo has been expanding quite a bit recently. It's said that they have a military background. Look at this advertisement. It looks like they're using this as a selling point. Are the fighting techniques of the military suitable for children? Luo Nan and Xue Lei glanced at each other. The military? Xue Lei didn't deliberately belittle the Thunder Falcon dojo just because it was possible that his master had a grudge against the Thunder Falcon dojo. He answered honestly, there's no need to compare fighting techniques between the military and the civilian population. In terms of systematization and general standards, the military's techniques certainly exceed those of the civilian population by a large margin. The dojo master also said that after the Third War, the military paid great attention to the inheritance and development of physical techniques. Some of the methods used to nurture the younger generation are worth learning from. Really? Then Weiwu. Based on Weiwu's age alone, I suggest that no matter where he learns, it's best to start with Daoyin. From movement to stillness, from shallow to deep. If his energy sense is up to standard, then he can achieve circulatory Daoyin, or even both movement and stillness in a single semester. But it's not that easy to achieve, link up step by step. Xue Lei needed to further explain when it came to some specialized terms. A group of men and women walked over from behind the bus stop at this time. One of them glanced over and laughed out loud. Chapter 435. Worker Zhai stared blankly for a moment before realizing that he had become the target of ridicule. He turned his head to look. There were 6 or 7 people over there, all around 20 or 30 years old. They were all smiling right now, but it was hard to tell who had spoken just now. Half of these people wore the same uniform. On the right chest was an abstract image of a bird. It looked like twisted lightning. Worker Zhai knew where these people came from when he saw this logo. Thunder Falcon Dojo. There was an escalator bridge a short distance away from the bus stop. It just so happened to lead to the newly launched branch dojo under the advertisement space of the shopping mall. This group of people must have taken advantage of the opening of the dojo to drink and celebrate. Luo Nan and Xue Lei knew a bit more than Worker Zhai. They had already locked onto the person who had just spoken. The fellow's face was a bit red, and he was staggering a bit as he walked. It was clear that he had drunk too much. But even so, they were able to recognize that they had met this person once before. Feng Jiejun, the dojo instructor who had hung out with He Donglu at Ocean Sky Cloud City. From then on, he radiated an abnormal hostility towards Xue Lei and the divine Yujim. Luo Nan's field of view was a bit wider. Aside from this group of people, he also noticed that there was another person who was on the phone 20 to 30 meters away. This person was originally on the same line as Feng Jejun and the others. He was just distracted, so he fell behind. This fellow was also an acquaintance. Luo Nan and Xue Lei were unwilling to pay attention to a drunkard like Feng Jejun. Worker Zhai had an easygoing personality. He just furrowed his brows and didn't say anything. He even hugged Di Weiwu to prevent the kid from causing trouble. It had to be said that Worker Zhai understood his adopted son's personality very well. Even though he hugged Di Weiwu in time, words still came out of Di Weiwu's mouth. "Who the hell are you?" Feng Jejun was currently tipsy. He laughed and took 2 steps forward. He extended his hand to touch Di Weiwu's head, but Di Weiwu avoided him. He snorted and pointed his arm at Xue Lei, unwilling to let him go. "Coach Xue, your dojo can't continue operating anymore. There's no need to push people into a pit, right?" Clearly, Feng Jejun's eyes and ears were half-baked after he was drunk. He didn't hear the first half of Xue Lei's words, which was tantamount to talking about his own dojo. Di Weiwu immediately laughed out loud. Then, he raised his head and complained to Worker Zhai, "You picked all over the place. Thunder Falcon and Lightning Bird? They're not that great." Even he himself said that he was tricked. Feng Jejun was no longer able to tell that Worker Zhai and his son were in cahoots with Luo Nan and Xue Lei. He really did have a problem with his brain. His expression immediately turned cold, and he glared at Di Weiwu. The little fellow's reaction was very fast, and her mouth was even more unforgiving. This person must be born in the year of the dog. He can change his face so easily. Worker Zhai smiled bitterly. He tightened his grip on the boy's arm so that he wouldn't let him continue tormenting him. Xue Lei also smiled and showed his talent for communication. "Don't mention coach, I'm still far from that level. Usually, I just receive clients and shake hands with people. Nice to meet you again, Coach Feng." Feng Jejun's expression became even more unsightly. Xue Lei's words were undoubtedly an allusion to the fact that he had taken the initiative to shake hands with Ocean Sky Cloud City to probe for information, and had even suffered a loss. Xue Lei was also mocking him for not being qualified to be a coach. What made him even more embarrassed was that Xue Lei casually extended his hand as he spoke. It was as if he was going to shake hands with Feng Jejun again. Feng Jejun had already sobered up. He was weaker than Xue Lei by more than a level, at least in terms of strength. Only a month had passed, and his strength was still the same. How could he be willing to lose face in front of his junior brothers and sisters? After hesitating for a second, Feng Jejun finally extended his hand and slapped Xue Lei's hand away. "What's the rush? On the day of the winter solstice, in the battle to establish our reputation, I will naturally ask for your guidance." It would have been better if he hadn't said these words. Luo Nan's and Xue Lei's fierce gazes pierced his face at the same time. The gazes of the two were different. Xue Lei's gaze was filled with a divine light of vitality. Feng Jejun's willpower was enough to resist it. However, Luo Nan was clearly wearing contact lenses. His eye sockets were permeated with a false luster, but behind that luster was an indescribable warping power. It made Feng Jejun tense up all of a sudden. He unconsciously took half a step back and adopted a defensive stance. The group of men and women traveling with Feng Jejun were a bit stupefied in the beginning. They didn't know why their senior brother suddenly didn't like these people. However, when Feng Jejun took up his stance, the quick-witted ones understood. 4 or 5 people immediately surrounded him. Xue Lei faced these people without the slightest fear. He took a large step forward and stood in front of Luo Nan and the Zhai father and son. His eyebrows were furrowed in anger, and his aura didn't yield in the slightest. Di Weiwu became excited when he saw this scene. He struggled to free his head from Worker Zhai's arms and said loudly, "What does it have to do with you that other people are fishing? A dog that goes around randomly biting won't attract people's attention no matter how long its tongue is. It's better if you wag your tail more, loser." The child's voice was bright and clear. Feng Jejun's face turned green on the spot. He forgot to ponder over Luo Nan's gaze. His drunkenness added to his anger, and he exploded in one go. He blurted out, "Shut up, you little bastard. Bastard your mother." Ugh. Diwei-Wu wanted to curse back, but Worker Zhai covered his mouth. However, Worker Zhai's words were half-spoken, and it was enough to burn away the last bit of Feng Jiejun's reason. He cursed vaguely and charged forward with large strides. Feng Jiejun moved, and the half-formed encirclement naturally shrank. The people of the Thunder Falcon Dojo all had the most basic of offensive and defensive awareness. They naturally attacked when they were close, seizing the initiative. A chaotic battle suddenly erupted. And then it ended. Feng Jiejun's fist made contact with Shui Lei's elbow, and the surrounding companions fell to the ground in a mess. They didn't even struggle before they fainted. Feng Jiejun's heart skipped a beat when he saw this scene. His energy was a bit chaotic, and Shui Lei took advantage of the situation to wrap his arm and lock his wrist. An enormous force like that of a lion and tiger pressed over, locking half of Feng Jiejun's body in place. Feng Jiejun's face instantly turned ashen. He was in a worse state than he was at Ocean Sky Cloud City. He had just touched Shui Lei, and he was utterly defeated. If news of this got out, his reputation in the industry would pretty much be finished. Shui Lei spoke next to his ear, "Why bother with a child?" Before Shui Lei could finish speaking, a voice suddenly came over, "The two of you don't need to bother with a group of drunkards." Only now did Shui Lei discover the person behind him. He frowned slightly. Behind him, Luo Nan slapped Shui Lei's waist. Shui Lei understood, and his hand skillfully pushed Feng Jiejun back a few steps. At this time, the person who had fallen behind due to the phone call finally walked to the bus stop. His face was a bit grave and stern, but he was indeed an acquaintance. Zhu Ling, the son of a military family in Xia City. He was the subordinate of Blood Prison Tian Bang, who was currently in the limelight. He had crossed paths with Luo Nan and the others a few days ago at Aurora Cloud City. His younger cousin, Zhu Maoshuan, had an old grudge with Luo Nan, but Zhu Maoshuan himself had quite the strength and ideas. Chapter 436. Seeing Zhu Ling appear, Luo Nan knew that it was impossible for the conflict to continue. This rising star of the military had a typical, planning before taking action, personality. Since he had spoken, he must have done some observation. He simply ignored Feng Jiejun and the others. He directly greeted Luo Nan and Shui Lei, "Mr. Luo, Mr. Shui." Jia Jun and the others lost their composure after drinking. They really shouldn't have. I apologize on their behalf. That's nothing. Luo Nan responded casually. He looked at Zhu Ling's speech and mannerisms, and a strange thought suddenly popped into his mind. It seems like you're always wiping the butts of others. You should clean up your circle of friends if you have nothing to do. It was better to put an end to this meaningless conflict as soon as possible. Luo Nan wasn't prepared to talk much with Zhu Ling. He also didn't want to get tangled up with Feng Jiejun, this drunkard. Luo Nan spoke without thinking, then he extended his hand and made a "please help yourself" gesture. Seeing this, Zhu Ling smiled and signaled Feng Jiejun and the others to move forward and leave the bus stop. His position in this group was very high, and he could see that Feng Jiejun was somewhat afraid. Even though he was still deeply dissatisfied, he was still dragged away by his companions. From the look in his eyes as he left, this hatred was firmly settled. Zhu Ling nodded at the two again, not intending to prolong the conversation. He followed closely behind Feng Jiejun and the others, turning to leave. However, after taking a few steps, he turned around and said, "Duan Hong of the Thunder Falcon Dojo was once Senior Colonel Meng Tu's comrade-in-arms. But he's retired now." Comrade? It's still in a lab. In other words, that gym master surnamed Duan was a burner? Zhu Ling's intention in saying this was not only to reveal some information but also to clarify the relationship between the Thunder Falcon Dojo and them. However, this relationship was limited to a certain range. Clearly, he also knew of the Winter Solstice Challenge. He knew of the close relationship between Xiu Xinyu, Luo Nan, and Shui Lei. This feeling of being the last to know was really not good. Seeing Zhu Ling and the others leave, Shuelei suddenly blurted out, "I want to go back and take a look." "I want to ask the dojo master," Luo Nan responded. "I'll go with you." "Don't." With the dojo master's personality, he definitely won't say anything if you go. "Then I'll help you ask Sister Yueyin. This matter shouldn't be hidden from her." "Alright, thank you." Luo Nan reached out his hand to give him a poke, telling him not to say such extravagant words. Shuelei forced a smile. At this moment, he was very worried. In terms of martial arts attainments, it wasn't a problem for Xiao Xinyu to leave these two youths far behind. But he had been sick and weak all these years, and he was so emaciated, how could anyone feel at ease fighting with him? He called for a flying 100-knot bug and left in a hurry. It was already deep into the night. Only Luo Nan and the Zhai family's father and son could get on the bus stop. Seeing Shuelei leave, Di Weiwu was actually a little disappointed, but he still said, "Are you still going to the orphanage?" Luo Nan was a bit hesitant, but the long-awaited low-altitude public transport finally arrived at the station at this time. When he saw Di Weiwu's pitiful eyes, his heart softened. "I'll go take a look." In any case, it was destined that he wouldn't be returning home tonight. There was no need for him to personally ask Yueyin about the matter. It could be settled on a low-altitude public transport. He could just treat it as coaxing a child. After getting on the public transport, the first thing Luo Nan did was ask his aunt for a leave of absence. He was a bit apprehensive in his heart, mainly because he had overlooked a point just now. If Imoya had first mentioned the matter of him not returning home, then he would have hit the muzzle of a gun. Luckily, his luck was pretty good tonight. He could hear his aunt's voice. Imoya hadn't exerted herself. His performance had been good during this time, and his body was becoming healthier and healthier. This was a plus. His aunt only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Luo Nan let out a long breath. After hanging up, he immediately contacted Yueyin without stopping. The god of luck was still watching over him, and the connection was made rather smoothly. Yueyin was silent for a moment after hearing Luo Nan's explanation. Then she responded, "From the monetary accounts, the Thunder Falcon Dojo has purchased a portion of the Castle Financial Group's assets in Xia City at a low price in the past few days. The timing is quite good, and there's a tacit understanding with the military's actions. Zhu Ling has admitted to this as well. But I don't understand right now. What's going on with the Battle of Winter's Solstice?" Yueyin was silent for a few seconds before saying, "There's a grudge between Xiao Xinyu and Duan Hong, but both sides are acting according to the rules. It was like this 10 years ago, and it's still like this 10 years later. It's best if we don't get involved. I still have things to do. I'm hanging up. Hello? Hello?" Luo Nan and Yueyin had known each other for many years, but he had never been hung up so quickly before. He was a bit stupefied for a time. Perhaps she really did have something urgent to do? The low-altitude public transport entered the Forest Wall district in this muddle-headed state. After 7 or 8 stops, they arrived at the stop closest to the orphanage. Then they only needed to walk another 300 meters. Just from the route alone, the Thunder Falcon Dojo was quite compatible with the newly opened branch dojo. But worker Zhai wouldn't send Di Weiwu there to be tortured no matter what. 5 minutes later, Luo Nan stood in front of the orphanage that he had scanned with his telepathic thoughts. Luo Nan was quite curious about the Dean Wan that the Zhai father and son spoke of, and the guide that Xie Junping and Du Yong spoke of. He really wanted to know what was so special about this person, aside from the face of the preacher that he had sensed before. But when they knocked on the door, they heard this piece of news: Dean Wan went out. It looks like he accepted an invitation. Nurse Wang of the orphanage was acquainted with the Zhai father and son. This old woman understood the ways of the world. She welcomed them in and greeted them warmly. This orphanage was reconstructed from the lower level of an abandoned shopping mall. Relatively speaking, it was already a relatively safe place on the recycling stratum. Over 20 rooms were separated, and 30 or so people lived there. All of them were teenagers and children under the age of 14. Most of them should have been asleep at this time, but Diweiwu's arrival caused quite a few of his little friends to become excited in an instant. They chattered noisily, forcing Nurse Wang to use the name of the dean to suppress them. Everything was settled down with great difficulty. Nurse Wang took the place of Dean Wan and fulfilled her duties as the host. She led worker Zhai and Luo Nan around the orphanage. Luo Nan's impression of this place gradually grew clearer. In his eyes, the deepest impression that the overall layout of the orphanage gave people was that it was simple yet extremely stylish. For example, the reception room. There were crisscrossing pipes overhead, but the entire floor was painted ash gray. There were wooden frames of the same color on the walls, and there were short tables of the same color on the floor. There were also 2 half-worn peach-colored sofas and a recliner that came from God knows where. The fruit platter on the short table was in the shape of an extremely interesting ladle. The light emitted from the iron cover hanging from the ceiling made people feel extremely comfortable. Chapter 437. Actually, in the 20 years since the construction of Gear, students and society members of different batches had come and gone like a horse lantern. Most of the time, Gear was not short on money. Interior renovation was a common thing. The interior decorations before Luo Nan took over were already beyond recognition from the very beginning. The interior renovation project of Gear was about to begin during this time. Luo Nan held many renovation blueprints in his hands, but he was unable to grasp them. He felt that the designer's tricks did not match with his mother's great works. But now he saw the layout of the reception room, and he was inexplicably pleased. Of course, this was not to say that moving this room to Gear was pleasing to the eye. It was just that this was how it should feel at this time and place. The interior layout would not make people forget that this was an abandoned shopping mall located in the dangerous recycling stratum. But sitting here and casually touching it was a relaxing atmosphere that made people cherish it even more. Especially when he heard Nurse Wang say that most of the furniture and decorations here were personally arranged and built by Dean Wan and the children. Luo Nan felt even more admiration. Even if such a person was involved in a secret order, it would be hard for people to feel ill will towards him. But looking at it from another angle, it seemed that worker Zhai still had a rather difficult path to walk in order to make Diweiwu truly believe in his godfather. Afraid of delaying the children's rest, Luo Nan and worker Zhai did not stay for long. They walked one round around the orphanage before saying their goodbyes and leaving. As before, they took the 24-hour low-altitude public bus and embarked on their return journey. Worker Zhai finally had some free time on the bus. He talked to Luo Nan about proper business, the dynamo core that he was researching. Right now, the dynamic structure mode has been basically determined. The simulation results are pretty good. But the bottleneck lies in the materials. I want to find you to confirm it. If possible, I suggest we use the method of dismantling and mending. Dismantling. East wall to repair west wall? Yes. If this dynamo core is only used for the Tai Chi ball, there is actually a large amount of redundancy in its functionality. We can use this point to cut off other unimportant branches to mend the gap. Luo Nan said, "You'll have to ask Shuelei about this. Or you can just ask the gym master to make a decision." "Sure. Tell me when you get back. I can do a few more simulations." Speaking of Xiao Shinyu, Luo Nan remembered the Battle of Winter Solstice. He immediately called Shuelei to ask about the situation. Shuelei picked up the call quickly, but he also hung up quickly. His progress was terrible. The only thing that could be confirmed was that Dojo Master Xiao had received Duan Hong's letter of challenge a long time ago. However, he had kept his mouth shut, clearly not intending to tell anyone. This was troublesome. Luo Nan got off the low-altitude bus after it entered the River Wu district. He needed to transfer to another bus, while worker Zhai could take the bus all the way back to Xiqing district. The air near the recycling stratum was a bit stuffy. Luo Nan checked the map of Xia City with his wristband. Mo Ye had already taken over his place and occupied his house in Blue Bay community. Now, he was homeless. Choosing a hotel to stay in had become a top priority. Luo Nan stood on the side of the road for less than half a minute. His finger swiped a few times on the virtual screen and a private car stopped beside him. The door opened and the driver called out, "Mr. Luo." "Brother Qin, sorry to trouble you." The one who drove over was naturally driver Qin, who was in charge of Luo Nan's security work. Luo Nan grew more and more familiar with him during this time. Luo Nan learned that his real name was Qin Ikuan. The two of them got along quite well and often discussed martial arts issues. The security team by Luo Nan's side was already on the road. Normally, when Luo Nan was traveling with other people, he would only follow in the shadows. He would only appear when he was traveling alone. A month's time was considered peaceful, and both sides were quite satisfied. Luo Nan sat in the car and let out a breath. He introduced his schedule for tonight. "I'm not going home today. I'm going to find a hotel to stay in." Qin Ikuan didn't say much. He just asked, "Where are we going?" Luo Nan apologized first. "I've caused trouble for you guys. It's really hard to find an employer like Mr. Luo who travels between 2 and 3 places." Luo Nan laughed. He already had a plan in mind. "Then let's go to Ocean Sky Cloud City. It'll be convenient for everyone." Qin Ikuan thought for a bit and quickly understood. He smiled and started the car. After driving for a while, Luo Nan suddenly spoke. "Brother Qin, have you heard any news about the winter solstice battle in Liuhejim? The one from the Thunder Falcon Dojo? You know about it." "I mainly know about Duan Hong." "Oh, Duan Hong is the master of the Thunder Falcon Dojo. When I was studying at Liuhejim, he was already quite famous in Xia City. He once visited Mr. Giant Arm and asked for a spar." Luo Nan was shocked. He asked in a hurry, "You won? You lost?" "A crushing defeat." Hee. "That's not unexpected." "Yeah. He was far weaker than Mr. Giant Arm at the time. However, there aren't many people in Xia City who can make Mr. Giant Arm agree to fight." "That's true. What happened to him later?" "I'm not too sure about that. It's just that the concept of the winter solstice battle has suddenly been hyped up in the industry. Only then did I know that he lost a bet 10 years ago. He went far away to train. Now that he's accomplished something, he's come back to get back at us." Luo Nan let out an "oh" and didn't say anything more. The journey was smooth. They arrived at Ocean Sky Cloud City in about 20 minutes. The atmosphere in the large living area was a bit worse than it was a dozen days ago. The collapse of Aurora Cloud City's parking lot had scared quite a few people. Right now, the construction team was still working on the repairs. The security team had already helped Luo Nan check in on the way here. Luo Nan and Qin Ikuan went straight upstairs after getting off the car. Qin Ikuan specifically chose a high-altitude bedroom on the 150th floor. Ocean Sky Cloud City's most famous viewing platform was a few floors down. That's right. Luo Nan chose Ocean Sky Cloud City not just because this place was only a few steps away from Acumen College. It would save him quite a bit of trouble when he went to school tomorrow morning. More importantly, there was a flying devil ray that he could use here. Luo Nan and Qin Ikuan just came out of the elevator when they saw the water within the central crystal pillar stir. The enormous body of the devil ray was like a bomber flying through the water. It swept past the crystal wall closest to the elevator and greeted Luo Nan. "So this is an infrasonic wave generator." Qin Ikuan was a bit moved. With the flying devil ray as a tool, Luo Nan's combat strength could already be evaluated as AB+ rank. Moreover, the sky was his main battlefield. He could come and go as he pleased. So from Luo Nan's perspective, this place was probably the safest place in Xia City aside from President Ouyang's laboratory. Qin Ikuan obviously understood Luo Nan's intentions. He was very grateful for this. In a public place like a hotel, any security team would have a relatively thorough contingency plan. It saved him a lot of effort. "I'll be next door. Mr. Luo, just call me if you need anything." "There shouldn't be anything. I'll go take a stroll on the viewing platform in a bit." "I'll go with you." Shinikuin didn't forget that this 16-year-old youth's battle had taken place there. Even if Luo Nan didn't believe that headquarters would send people over to make a move, he still had to prevent certain people from losing their minds and going crazy, right? Luo Nan didn't mind. He entered the room and gave a rough glance before coming out and heading to the viewing platform. There were people coming down from the upper floor when he entered the elevator. There were 7 or 8 of them, and the elevator was half full. They seemed to be quite familiar with each other. They were all talking. They should be attending a gathering or something at the same time. The gathering was over right now. Chapter 438. Huh. Luo Nan's ears perked up when he heard a rather familiar word. The speaker's voice was actually quite soft. It wasn't very obvious in the exchange of greetings between the group of people, but it couldn't be hidden from ability users like Luo Nan and Shinikuin. Shinikuin had done his homework quite well. He noticed Luo Nan's expression, so he shot a glance in that direction and raised his spirits. As for Luo Nan, he didn't need to turn his head at all within this narrow space. He could distinguish everyone's faces purely by relying on his mental senses. Then he noticed a familiar face. What a coincidence. The person who spoke in front continued, with this skill, we must continue to work hard and make a name for ourselves as soon as possible. In this day and age, the most undesirable thing is to be pretentious. If we have the ability, we must show it to others. Let's not go back first. Let's go to the viewing platform to get some fresh air and have a deep chat. At this time, the elevator went down to the 142nd floor, where the viewing platform was. The elevator door opened, and Luo Nan and Shinikuin glanced at each other. Shinikuin extended his hand to indicate for Luo Nan to go first. Luo Nan nodded and went out first, but he felt that Shinikuin's reaction was a bit off. He paid attention to the target, but that was all. His level of vigilance did not keep up. Luo Nan ignored what was behind him after walking out of the elevator. He walked straight in the direction of the viewing binoculars. His behavior was quite natural, but at the same time, he privately contacted Shinikuin through the Hexier ability user. What? Which one? The one who didn't speak. If it weren't for Shinikuin's well-trained training, he would have turned around and left. At this moment, 2 more people came out of the elevator and turned in the direction of the heavenly ocean lake. They were the 2 people who wanted to have a deep chat. Shinikuin listened carefully to the man's footsteps. At the same time, he tried his best to sense, but he did not discover anything new. I can't sense anything at all. Yes, he hit it very well. If Luo Nan hadn't been able to see the scene of this person preaching from afar through his mental senses, he would have inadvertently missed this person. The most amazing thing was that the other party didn't seem to be deliberately concealing it. Instead, in the most natural state, it restrained all the abnormal aura and maintained the most harmonious state with the surrounding environment, just like his work. At this time, the conversation on the other side was going on. The person who spoke earlier seemed to be very impatient. As soon as he stood still, he said in an especially excited tone, I've already thought about it. I'll use concepts like the meditation club or the oxygen bar. Although it sounds like it's all over the place, as long as there's a living example like Xie Junping, those elites and rich second-generation heirs who've had enough fun will still flock to him. The so-called second young master of the Xie clan was indeed Xie Junping. Luo Nan was certain in his heart. He walked to the edge of the platform. It looked like he was admiring the night scenery, but his mental senses enveloped the entire platform. The man who had been silent for a long time finally spoke. He did not seem to be very enthusiastic about it. Director Wu, this Director Wu was probably a director of some company. When he talked about business, he could not stop talking. He interrupted him and said, I can tell that you don't have any concept. Did you know that this was the way of the Castlevania Financial Group? Have you heard of the Castle Financial Group? No. Then you should have heard of the brand Shinda, right? Sportswear? That's right. There are also a few others. Director Wu casually mentioned 3 or 4 brands with world or regional fame. These are all intangible assets of the Castle Financial Group. Just these alone have a market value of over 10 billion. And I just heard some news recently. Standing behind this financial group is Up Order. What do you think? I don't have any thoughts. I don't understand what you mean. I want you to pay attention to the interesting chemical reaction that will occur when an order and capital are added. I also know Mrs. Halder of the Castle Financial Group. She's a skilled trader, but I believe that I'm not inferior to her. But 10 days ago, the assets under her banner were over 5 times mine. Director Wu spent a few minutes describing the relationship between the Castle Financial Group and the Blood Flame Order. From what Luo Nan knew of the inside story, there were many elements of hearsay in Director Wu's words. There were even a few laughable mistakes. But the general sequence of events was made clear. Luo Nan discovered once again that he had overestimated the thickness of the barrier between the secular world and the inner world. The conflict between the two factions of the Blood Flame Order had already caused an impact in the secular world. The repercussions had yet to fade. Director Wu learned some knowledge from this. I'm a bit late in understanding that business can be done this way. Actually, the order and capital, the mystic arts and money, have been a perfect match since ancient times. Fortunately, it's not too late. You just said that they didn't have a good ending. That's only relative. In fact, they've already settled down in T-City. The projects they've invested in still receive the full support of the T-City government. They're still the capital protected by the laws of the Earth Coalition government. What's this? This is world-class influence. Director Wu's tongue was like a lotus flower. He tried to convince the man in front of him in one fell swoop. We can completely follow this path. You preach, I make money, we support each other. I don't understand all this. I just want to ask. Director Wu, aren't you going to do a few treatments? I think it's very appropriate to follow the order's method of moderation and getting used to it. Director Wu's expression changed slightly. He laughed again. That's it. I think it can convince a lot of people. Think about it a bit more. This conversation fully illustrated the maxim of not getting along with each other. A conversation that could create billions of wealth ended hastily. Director Wu maintained a polite smile. In reality, he left with resentment. In order to avoid the elevator that was destined to be awkward, the other person waited for a moment. Then he cast his gaze over and swept his gaze over. After all, there were only these two groups of people on the entire platform. Chi Nikun observed carefully and seriously. Who knew that Luo Nan would raise his hand in the open? Is it Dean Wan? Luo Nan listened from beginning to end. He was already convinced that this ability user, who didn't seem to have any inhuman characteristics, was the welfare Dean Wan Ta that he had missed. Luo Nan recognized Wan Ta, but Wan Ta didn't recognize Luo Nan. He had a bit of suspicion on his face. You are Luo Nan. Luo as in Luo Lai, Nan as in Nan Nan. Wan Ta's eyebrows moved slightly. He had probably heard of this name before. He said it out loud. You're the one that Junping and Little Yong talked about, yeah. Their awakening ceremony went smoothly, right? Luo Nan laughed as he walked forward. It will probably take a month or two for them to truly comprehend and cross the threshold. Many thanks for your help in guiding them. Their path is very proper, and you didn't spoil things through excessive enthusiasm. Wan Ta laughed very peacefully. He chatted about these extraordinary abilities like he was chatting about his daily life. Luo Nan also chatted very naturally. He started chatting casually. Actually, we just went to pay a visit to your home. It's the orphanage in the Forest Wall district. Did Junping and Little Yong have any problems with their training? No. I went with worker Zhai and Diwei Wu. Wan Ta was a bit surprised. Worker Zhai? Di Donghua? Chapter 439. It seemed that Wan Ta had a good impression of worker Zhai. Di Donghua is a person with a sense of order. He does things in a clear and organized manner. He is very suitable to get along with Wei Wu. I hope Weiwu can learn a bit more. His talent of chaos gives me a headache. Talent of chaos? Luo Nan thought of a few things and couldn't help but laugh. He really is a troublemaker. Qi Nikuan couldn't help but glance at Luo Nan when he heard this. Wasn't this guy publicly recognized as a troublemaker? He had made a name for himself for 2 months and already had enemies all over the world. Weiwu has lived in the wilderness since he was a child. The rules he learns are completely different from those in the city. He is also a very arrogant child. It will take him a long time to adapt. I really hope that Mr. Zhai can adopt him, but unfortunately, the Social Security Department refused on the grounds that Mr. Zhai is still single. It was a bit subtle to talk about adoption with a member of the secret order. But Luo Nan felt that it was quite good, whether it was the topic or the person in front of him. So he complimented, Weiwu can learn quite a bit by following Dean Wan. But Wan Ta's expression turned serious. He shook his head in denial. Weiwu is a natural-born adventurer. He constantly pursues novelty and excitement in order to obtain happiness. Mr. Zhai's power of order is just right for him. It is like a brake pad, allowing him to brush past danger. But for me, it is like a cage. It will only stifle his characteristics. Wan Ta paused a bit when he spoke to this point. He looked at Luo Nan. Mr. Luo, you are another cage. You are powerful but complicated. You are also very contradictory. You have a talent that allows you to return order and order to a corner of the chaotic world. But at the same time, you make the surrounding world more chaotic. Finally. Wan Ta finally revealed a bit of a swindler, but he didn't hate it. This was because his words were surprisingly sincere and straightforward. Most importantly, what he said was in line with reality. Luo Nan had always been good at this kind of relatively empty topic. He asked, Dean Wan pursues order? Yes. Returning order and order to the chaotic world has always been my pursuit of a sense of accomplishment. Oh, I'm sorry. These words might be a bit hypocritical. Wan Ta carefully organized his thoughts and said, I should say that the existence of order enters my eyes and heart. It conforms to my aesthetics and calms my mind. And I think that most people in the world think the same way as me. Yes, human cognition is a process of returning chaos to order. Using cognition to guide our actions, making the surrounding environment more orderly. Almost everyone does this, but the ability users can do it better. But it could be worse, Vanta added. Luo Nan came to a realization under Wan Ta's meaningful gaze 2 seconds later. Are you talking about me? I don't mean to offend you, but in my opinion, Mr. Luo, the way you affect the surrounding environment is very likely to be too direct and violent. At least according to my senses. This was the second time Wan Ta had said this, and it was more direct than the last time. Qi Nikuan, who was at the side, wanted to stay far away. If he continued to listen, his head would probably explode. However, when he heard Wan Ta's words, he did not dare to move. He was worried that if these two did not get along, they might end up fighting. Luo Nan only displayed a bit of curiosity. Rough? Do you think so, President Wan? I think so. We should have something in common on this matter. For example, we all use various methods to form our own order. But next, I use the law of creation to affect external objects. Starting from the plants and trees around me, I create the most suitable pattern according to their respective material natures. Look, this is my ritual for sensing material natures. Wan Ta directly formed a seal with his hands and adjusted his breathing. He gradually raised the seal from his lower abdomen to the space between his eyebrows. This ritual is something I modified by referring to the model of traditional religions. What I seek is the state of harmony between my body and the material form of the outside world. He really was preaching at the drop of a hat. However, Luo Nan greatly appreciated this frankness and directness. He also felt that the scene before his eyes was somewhat familiar. His mind spun twice, and he finally thought of something. Wasn't this child? Back when he was at Frost River Reality on Fudong Great Street, the ears of truth had frankly and magnanimously exchanged knowledge with him. Speaking of which, they were all creatures that lived completely within their own logic. Wanta's description was quite precise, but Luo Nan knew that there was a more convenient method to communicate with such people. With this thought clear, Luo Nan cast his consciousness into the depths of the void. On the mental plane, he deliberately operated the gravitational effect of the closed system, causing the heavily chained crow to reveal itself and head straight for the abyssal region. Last time, he and Child had used the form of confrontation on the mental plane to complete the relevant communication. Now, he made the same invitation to Wanta. Luo Nan felt that Wanta would use a similar method to respond. However, Wanta's method was a bit novel. He raised his hand to his forehead and pressed it down again, ending at his lower abdomen. But during this process, a layer of seemingly soothing undulation was conducted in a specific direction. Originally, it only flowed in the material world, but for some unknown reason, it suddenly crossed the boundary between material and mental. It climbed layer by layer, heading straight for Luo Nan's plane. From Qi Nikuan's point of view, the various scenes on the viewing platform during this period of time were simply like an absurd play directed by a crazy artist. Luo Nan and Wanta maintained their silence most of the time. They just looked at each other. Luo Nan could roughly guess that they were communicating through the mental plane. There were very few times when the two would even open their mouths. However, the syllables that came out of Dean Wan's mouth did not belong to any language that Qi Nikuan was familiar with. They were more like some sort of religious incantation. As he spat out the syllables, he continued to form seals and wander. His movements were strange and complex. Then Luo Nan did the same. It was just that when he spat out the syllables, he used his hand to draw some sort of diagram. It was a vague representation of formatting theory. If they weren't ability users, if they weren't mentally enhanced, Qi Nikuan would be certain that they were all lunatics. Even now, it was more or less the same. This bizarre exchange continued for approximately 20 minutes. Qi Nikuan watched until his scalp went numb. There were several times when he wanted to report the relevant situation, but he forcefully suppressed it. This continued until one moment when Luo Nan's brows suddenly furrowed. His movements paused, as if he was troubled by something. Wanta undid his hand seals and returned to their normal form of communication. It's getting late. I need to go back. The public security over there isn't too good at night. Luo Nan went, oh, but he didn't urge him to stay. He just said, many thanks for your guidance. I will definitely pay you a visit later. Wanta simply replied with a word of welcome and nodded towards Qi Nikuan. He turned around and walked towards the elevator. Luo Nan watched him leave. He waited for the elevator door to open and close before going down. Only then did he turn his gaze towards the sparse starry night sky. Though he had something on his mind, he still sighed in satisfaction. Let's go back. Okay. Chapter 440. Luo Nan did not pay attention to Qi Nikuan's expression. He rode the elevator up, his mind still recalling what he had learned from the previous exchange. He had benefited greatly from the exchange with Wanta. That person's understanding of order, especially the difference in the two's methods of achieving order, was described to perfection. It was displayed without restraint. Just as Wanta had said, Luo Nan's method of achieving order was to change his own body, including the existences of the plants and trees around him. He formed a materialized space. There was nothing else besides these. Therefore, even though he was communicating on the mental plane, he was using material waves to influence the mental plane. He was not using soul strength. This was even more material than fleshly body strengthening. This was the fundamental reason why his order called it creation. As for the so-called creator, that was an overinterpretation. But from Luo Nan's perspective, Wanta's law of creation was more like a mirror. It reflected his own understanding and practice of order. The current effect of Luo Nan's formatting theory was a kind of restraint on the mental willpower. It gradually moved from the mental plane to the material plane. In a certain sense, this kind of restraint was the most thorough. But because of the extreme complexity of the mental plane, there were times when one would pay attention to the beginning and forget about the end. In comparison, the specific rituals and methods of communication between them were just minor details. Mr. Luo? Ah, we're here. Luo Nan came back to his senses. He saw that the elevator door was already open. He patted his head, said goodnight to Chinikuan, and returned to his room. He hastily washed his face and lay down on the bed. He closed his eyes and let his thoughts enter a more pressing track. He did not forget that the reason he had interrupted the exchange was because there were more important things he needed to do. Luo Nan's consciousness followed the internal connection of the sealed system. It passed through the greatly warped mental curtain and cut into the depths of the mental plane. Suddenly, a rolling mist spread out before his eyes. It was like the boiling of the ocean, roaring and turbulent. TSK, I knew that this method wasn't reliable. After confirming the current situation, Luo Nan calmed down a bit. He went into an out-of-body state in his bedroom, hooked up the external neuron, and shot out through a crack in the window into the night sky. Luo Nan's soul body arrived 10 kilometers away in the wetland jungle of Acumen College in the blink of an eye. He locked onto the building of gear and flew down. Another 10 seconds passed, and Luo Nan entered the cloud world. The scene from the Wraith Sign's perspective just now was happening in front of him in an even more frenzied manner. Amidst the suddenly amplified noise, a huge amount of clouds and ice crystals swept past like an uncontrollable tsunami, displaying the worst side of the cloud world. Luo Nan floated in the air, his soul cloak fluttering and swirling. He continued to interfere with the surrounding material world. This could be considered a brief warm-up. Luo Nan had already locked onto his target at this time. It was within the turbulent clouds 20 kilometers away. A mushed-mouth ape flew as fast as lightning, but it also showed rare signs of panic and pain. It let out an ear-piercing screech as it flew at high speed. Its body kept twisting as it tried to shake off the bindings on its body. As for the binding, it was the Wraith Sign. It's only been a few days and you've already created such a scene for me. Luo Nan was complaining, but he was actually quite excited in his heart. Ever since he discovered and entered the cloud world, he had always been tossing and turning, searching in the thick clouds, playing hide-and-seek with those mush-mouth apes, but this world was really too big and too strange. He didn't find any traces left behind by his parents. He also didn't find Snake Tongue's shadow. There was no way for Luo Nan to be satisfied with this sort of progress. Things finally changed for the better when the Wraith Sign entered. Even though this was the result of the fellow not doing proper work. The mushed-mouth ape that lived in the cloud world was an extremely terrifying predator, and the Wraith Sign was one as well. The Wraith Sign was able to coexist peacefully with the mushed-mouth apes for the past 10 days under Luo Nan's constraints. But as Luo Nan's energy was constantly diverted by other matters, this fellow finally began to run wild. For days ago, the Wraith Sign used its powerful hunting instincts to silently lock onto this mushed-mouth ape. It used the polar domain to use an inconceivable method of infiltration to unwittingly lock onto the lifeline of this mushed-mouth ape. Then it exerted its strength today. The Wraith Sign's originally incorporeal body had already become indistinct and visible due to it being infinitely close to the material plane. Most of its body sunk into the back of the mushed-mouth ape. It greedily extracted the energy and blood of the mushed-mouth ape, transforming it into the nutrients it needed. Without a doubt, this marathon hunt had reached its end. The Wraith Sign bit into the throat of its prey and began to reap the harvest. But like all nature documentaries, this primitive and wild hunting operation had a very high probability of failure. Since the mushed-mouth ape's energy and blood was extremely vigorous, the transformation required a certain amount of time. The Wraith Sign seemed to be in control of everything right now, but it was actually at its weakest. It was infinitely close to the material plane, which meant that normal methods could strike it. The Wraith Sign was alive and well right now because it had effective control over the prey beneath it. But this control was unable to affect the other mushed-mouth apes. Right now, the prey beneath it shrieked in pain and the turbulence brought about by its high-speed flight. The other mushed-mouth apes had already received the relevant information. Even though they didn't have any kinship with each other, a few nearby mush-mouth apes gathered over out of curiosity. The mush-mouth apes' attack methods could cover the material plane and the mental plane at the same time. It could even blast all the way to the abyssal region on the mental plane. Once these mush-mouth apes discovered the target and lent a helping hand, the wraith sign would become a living target. Luo Nan needed to do something. Even though what he could do was very limited. The scarcity of options made it easier for him to make a judgment. He pondered for a few seconds, and his floating soul body suddenly sped up. The strength of his soul cloak slapping against the mist and ice crystals increased to the highest level. Rustling sounds rang out, and the interference force on the material plane was completely unleashed. At the same time, he expanded the range of his mental senses to the limit. One by one, he locked onto the mush-mouth apes that surged over from all directions. It didn't matter what direction or distance they came from. As long as they were within the range of his senses, Luo Nan sent out a mental attack. The radius of Luo Nan's senses was roughly 25 kilometers. But when faced with a terrifying hunter like the mush-mouth ape, the fragrance emitted by the soul body had to be at least 5 times the distance. The mush-mouth ape was an existence that was essentially driven by instinct. They were practically unrestrained by social organizations. Between companions and food, what would they choose? Of course, it would be food. Chapter 441. Hurry up and get it done. Luo Nan didn't know how to instruct the wraith sign on how to devour a B+ rank mush-mouth ape. He could only issue this vague command, turn around, and run. He ran as far as he could. The speed of a soul body flying at full speed was quite impressive, but the mush-mouth apes weren't inferior. Their attacks were like erupting lava. They could easily reach several kilometers with a single move. The degree of deceleration was so small that it made people want to cry. This situation was completely different from how Luo Nan dealt with Tian Bang and the others. Back then, Luo Nan was playing a game of hide and seek. He wandered about on the mental plane, completely occupying the home field advantage. He came and went as he pleased. And right now, though he was flying in the clouds, it was like he was playing a hopscotch game in the magma of the Earth's crust. The attacks from the mush-mouth apes were far too berserk. They interfered with the material and mental planes at the same time, causing the area he was in to distort and mutate. It was like a boundless lava hell. After the attacks overlapped many times, even the incorporeal mental curtain burned one after another. It turned into a deathly stillness and blankness. This was the first time Luo Nan had seen the mental curtain being burned and destroyed. Of course, it would slowly recover after a dozen or so seconds. The so-called burning should be a kind of extremely distorted illusion. From Luo Nan's perspective, every time this situation occurred, it was the same as cutting off most of his escape routes. He needed to increase the distance, and he needed to dodge attacks from time to time. He couldn't truly escape into the polar domain and throw these fellows off. He was truly at a loss. He was in an extremely sorry state. It was only because his soul strength reserves exceeded his imagination that he was able to withstand the pressure. He pulled 1 more. He kited 5 mush-mouth apes, running further and further away. It had to be said that Luo Nan's aggro was quite substantial. The cloud world was vast and boundless, and the density of mush-mouth apes was extremely small. These 5 mush-mouth apes were all the stock the wraith sign had attracted over the past 5 days. Luo Nan was certainly in an extremely sorry state, but the wraith sign had become calm and tranquil. Its devouring and absorption speed had greatly increased. Soon, right? Soon. Luo Nan was forced to his limits after being besieged and attacked by several mush-mouth apes. He no longer had the energy to divert his attention to the side. He was simply unable to grasp the situation far away. He didn't have any thoughts of sacrificing himself for others. He had already set a bottom line before he made his move. As long as he felt he exceeded his limits, he would escape into the polar domain regardless of whether the wraith sign succeeded or not. He would first protect himself. This note arrived very quickly. Luo Nan didn't know how much time had passed. All he knew was that he had finally reached his limit after an incomparably long chase. The combined attack of the 3 rotten-mouthed apes had burned away all of the obstacles around him. His spiritual plane had completely turned into an invisible volcano, forcing him to dive into the deepest part of the polar domain. Only then could he avoid the impatient fire poison that directly pierced into the depths of his soul. He ran out of the dead zone in a sorry state and out of the clouds several hundred kilometers away. Those mush-mouthed apes had long since disappeared. Luo Nan had already suffered a bit of injury at this time. In the depths of his soul body, there was a burning sensation, and he did not know where the problem was. Fortunately, the external neuron was now occupying the core of his soul body, and it had even formed a condensation ring. As the mental and physical planes interchanged, the heat and dryness were expelled bit by bit. This process was extremely slow. Luo Nan estimated that he spent nearly 2 hours in order to dispel most of the fiery energy. Though the remaining energy was still being channeled, he was worried about the time issue in the outside world. He didn't dare to stay for too long. He wanted to go back and deal with it. Only now did Luo Nan have the leisure to pay attention to the wraith sign. Well, no matter what, this guy wasn't dead yet. Now it slept. This was Luo Nan's first time seeing the sleeping appearance of the human-faced arachnid, and the place it slept in was very odd. Right now, the wraith sign's figure was half incorporeal and half incorporeal. It lingered in the boundary region between the mental and physical planes. However, it looked quite safe because it was hidden within the body of the mushed-mouthed ape. The snake swallowed the elephant. It did not swallow the elephant, but instead formed a strange parasitic relationship. The mushed-mouthed ape's blood energy was far too thick. This was a powerful life form comparable to AB+ rank. Even if the wraith sign absorbed it in an unending stream, it would not be able to digest it all in a short amount of time. In this way, the mushed-mouthed ape had the wraith sign within its body, and the blood-soul temple was within the wraith sign's body. The levels were clear. However, the flow of the blood energy within the mushed-mouthed ape really needed to be studied in detail. Luo Nan was suspended in the depths of the mental plane, and he let out a breath of relief. It was only now that he was convinced that he was able to escape unscathed from the joint attack of 5 mushed-mouthed apes comparable to AB+ rank. Well, these beasts were a bit lacking in intelligence, and he had suffered a bit of injury as well. Even so, this was an accomplishment he could be proud of. The mental plane surging with a myriad of curtains was truly his home ground. He decided to quickly rendezvous with the wraith sign. His mind naturally expanded, and the mental plane interweaved with the living starry sky to determine a new direction. The living starry sky changed endlessly according to the surrounding environment. Only his core star domain and the believers that revolved around it always existed. They formed the basic structure of the closed system of formatting theory. Why was there an extra piece all of a sudden? Within the living starry sky, a bewildering yet real nebula appeared within Luo Nan's system. It revolved around the periphery of his core star domain. There was no doubt that it had already entered the range of society formatting that Luo Nan could control. However, due to the influence of its own chaotic order frame, its structure was still somewhat fuzzy. That's right. The wraith sign should have already controlled the mushed-mouthed ape. Then from a system perspective, Luo Nan suddenly came to his senses. His telepathic thoughts seeped out, and several hundred kilometers away, the dispirited and listless mush-mouthed ape suddenly opened its fierce eyes. It was a bit confused, but it was extremely quiet. It was quiet like a wooden puppet. Was this for real? Luo Nan's soul body was infected with the habits of his fleshly body once more. He gasped in response, and then he issued an order from a distance. Turn around. The mush-mouthed ape hesitated slightly, but a tenth of a second passed before its enormous body, which was over 6 meters tall, turned around. Raise your left leg. There was still a moment of hesitation. Then this vicious creature really did a golden rooster standing on one leg, and it maintained this posture. Punch. Jump. Fly. The mush-mouthed ape's reactions varied in speed, but in the end, it would carry out Luo Nan's orders without any discount. Luo Nan gradually came to understand. The mushed-mouth ape's hesitation was actually an interpretation of his telepathic thoughts. It was an adaptation process. After a dozen or so orders, the mushed-mouth ape's hesitation was practically non-existent. Oh, really? How should he put it? Luo Nan's soul body made a gesture of spreading his hands. Actually, it was very difficult for him to hold back his laughter. A tyrannical vicious beast comparable to a B+ rank was under his command just like that? The results obtained from the Wraith Sign's willful actions were simply inconceivable. Chapter 442. After brushing shoulders with death several dozen times, he had finally accumulated enough luck to exchange for the embrace of the goddess of luck. Luo Nan sprinted the entire way, quickly traversing several hundred kilometers. He arrived at the area where the mushed-mouth ape captive was located. The bewildering nebula corresponding to the mushed-mouth ape had already stabilized its orbit. It was extremely deep. If one were to convert it into the stratification of the social format, then it would enter the third level, the technician level. It would stand side by side with the Wraith Sign. The technician level? How could a captive do that? The definition of the stratification of the social format was that there were priests and politicians, and there was no need to care about the students. The most essential difference between a technician and an employee was that an employee could only display their abilities to serve Luo Nan, while a technician could increase Luo Nan's own abilities by a considerable amount. In terms of strength, the Wraith Sign and Baze were currently in a direct confrontation. Baze would most likely obtain victory without Luo Nan's interference. However, the Wraith Sign was able to firmly occupy the technician level. The fundamental reason was that Luo Nan's soul strength could operate more efficiently through a special Darksider life form like the Wraith Sign. His My Heart's a Prison ability formed a perfect match with the Wraith Sign, and the Wraith Sign was the largest supplier of his soul strength reserves. Looking at it this way, the mushed-mouth ape certainly had something special that could be used to enter the technician level. As for what it was, he would know after using it in the future. But how would he use it? He couldn't bring such a big guy over and take him away. If he really had to fight an enemy, was he supposed to pull the enemy into the cloud world? Oh, so you're saying. Luo Nan's heart thumped. His train of thought suddenly deviated to a new direction. He was a bit unable to restrain himself as soon as this thought arose. Come. Don't think too much. You'll know once you try. Luo Nan didn't say anything further. His thoughts moved, and a subtle change occurred in the structure of the external neuron that was one with his mind. It opened up a channel to the normal world. Big monkey, can you go through? The mushed-mouth ape sensed Luo Nan's thoughts. Its strong and sturdy body flew directly toward the incorporeal channel. This situation was similar to when he drove the human-faced arachnid into the cloud world. It was just that the direction was reversed. Luo Nan observed from behind. He saw the mushed-mouth ape's figure slightly warp in front of the incorporeal channel. He was filled with anticipation, but then he suddenly remembered. The channel in the normal world led to the space of the tree hole. The mushed-mouth ape was over 3 meters tall, and his shoulders were wide and round. Once he went over, that narrow space would immediately explode. The mushed-mouth ape had already taken half a step into the incorporeal passageway. Luo Nan didn't have the time to think too much. His soul body arrived before the mushed-mouth ape. The familiar narrow environment was indeed the space of the tree hole. It was very difficult to stop the space tunnel on both sides. Otherwise, there was no telling what would happen. Shift. At the same time, Luo Nan used telescope mode to observe the changes in the structure of the space of the tree hole as much as possible after the return passage opened. At this moment, even Luo Nan himself didn't know what he was doing. He just felt a scorching aura overflow from the void. The space in the tree hole was clearly shaking, creaking. Perhaps it would collapse in the next moment. Luo Nan's soul cloak fluttered in the wind. He shielded this attack with all his might, protecting this place. However, at this moment, the soul strength that belonged to him was being consumed at a terrifying rate. This was the first time ever since Luo Nan possessed this excessive amount of soul strength. This was the first time such an astonishing leak had occurred. It was as if a large hole had been dug into the seabed, and an enormous amount of reserves poured down in torrents. The hole was located at the location of the external neuron. The external neuron was the key to opening the world tunnel. The condensation ring structure was the external neuron, but a special structure would naturally form in the hollow region of the ring when the world tunnel was opened. The scale was far too small, exceeding the limits of Luo Nan's senses. He never knew the specific circumstances. Perhaps it was due to the effect of Luo Nan's intense willpower, but the external neuron, which was connected to his mind, used a special method to warp the key structure in the hollow region. The key structure trembled and changed within a certain range. Every time it trembled, a large amount of soul strength was burned and consumed. However, there were even more marvelous fluctuations that covered the mental and material planes. The distortion spread to the normal scale of the external environment. The enlarged distorted structure vaguely corresponded with the space of the tree hole observed through the telescope. Another opening. Luo Nan didn't have the time to think too much. His soul body leaped out of the tree hole and directly smashed into the swamp lake outside the withered tree sandbar. A second later, the calm surface of the water rippled, and boiling bubbles rushed up. If someone was underwater at this time, they would probably piss their pants. Behind Luo Nan was a malevolent demon. Only its face and a small portion of its shoulders were exposed. Its body was covered in a layer of magma-like flames. Water vapor rose from it as it struggled and roared. It seemed as if it could charge out at any time, but it also seemed as if it could be cut in two by the ruptured door at any time. The water near Luo Nan's soul body actually had over 1,000 mental curtains that were intensely warped. They were linked to the material plane, and the external neuron was the core. The key structure was projected onto the normal scale, forming an incorporeal and unstable door. In this way, the space tunnel could temporarily exist independently from the space of the tree hole. However, after abandoning the fixed exit, the benefit of nearly zero consumption came to an end. The area where the mental and material planes converged had an enormous degree of warping, and the energy consumed was astonishing. As the sole energy provider of the external neuron, Luo Nan's accumulated soul strength had already fallen by 2/3 in a short second. This was an instantaneous drop that had never happened before. The rate of decline was very frightening, but if he could realize his expectations and deliver a B+ rank vicious beast to him, it would be worth it. However, reality was always more bony than ideals. This won't do. I won't be able to deliver it. Luo Nan sensed both sides at the same time. He knew that the cloud world and the normal world were connected by a crack that could transport objects. But the volume and weight of the object were not important. What was truly troublesome was the influence it had on the framework of the world order. To move the rotten-tail ape over, the gravitational force on the other side would become extremely astonishing. It was like 1,000 incorporeal ropes and chains binding it. Luo Nan had already squandered away the little bit of flexibility it had left. He could forcefully continue, but from this point on, every time a small part of its body was pulled out, the consumption would increase exponentially. Looking at the enormous body of the rotten-tail ape, which was over 6 meters tall, Luo Nan's most robust accumulation of soul strength was only able to satisfy 1/10 of the requirements. Right, this was the result of not including the consumption of opening the unfixed passage. In other words, even if Luo Nan could shrink the rotten-tail ape by 10 times and perfectly fit it into the space of the tree hole, it would still be impossible to come over. The only good news right now was that the external neuron's energy consumption optimization was done very well. As long as this degree was maintained, the consumption of maintaining the space tunnel across the world was barely acceptable. He could bring this half of the vicious beast's body to come and go as he pleased. What the hell? Luo Nan originally believed that it could appear as a super profound meaning, but now it looked like it was just a remnant move. Demon summoning, remnant, roar of the rotten mouth ape. Luo Nan looked straight at the sinister and ugly face. He lost the courage to even imagine the thought of relying on this thing to deal with powerful people like Tian Bang. Chapter 443. Darkness still covered the forest. Most of the living beings here were still in deep sleep. Only a few small nocturnal beasts by the lakeshore noticed the abnormal churning surface of the water in the center of the swamp lake. They let out low roars of unease, creating a bit of noise. But that was all. A dim red light flickered faintly beneath the surface of the lake. But after a few seconds, both light waves and water waves returned to tranquility. This is barely enough. Luo Nan shrugged his shoulders a bit awkwardly. His soul body, which could sufficiently interfere with the material world, felt no different from his fleshly body when he moved. And because of this, he was able to fully feel the blazing aura spreading from behind him. 10 centimeters above the shoulder of his soul body, about the same height as his ears, was a pair of thick and ugly ape arms. They were slightly bent and extended, but the back end was empty. No body could be seen. It was as if the arms had appeared out of thin air. The 2 ape arms were over 2 meters in length. They exceeded the height of most people, and their muscles were robust. Perhaps people would believe that they were 2 human silhouettes in the darkness. The flowing lava on the ape arms hardened slightly in the lake water, looking like warped scales. In comparison, the flames were restrained, fusing together with the messy fur patterns on the body. It was eye-catching, but it really went against the aesthetics of ordinary people. Come, move. The ape arms made a few fist-clenching movements following Luo Nan's thoughts. Aside from the control of the fleshly body, it also included releasing energy, interfering, and so on. The bottom of the lake became muddy for a time. Mud flowed everywhere. The underwater life forms that inhabited here, such as carps, eels, shrimps, and even alligators, swam around and drilled holes. Occasionally, some would bump into the ape, but the latent energy would turn the world dark. They were battered and exhausted. Looking at the situation of releasing energy, the mush-mouth ape's strength had crossed over to the other world. Roughly 20 to 30% of its strength had been consumed. However, the lava bombardment, which shook and warped the mental and material planes, was still effective. In this way, Luo Nan could borrow Luo Nan's mental sensing ability to replace his eyes and ears. This pair of enormous ape arms could display considerable combat power. Considering continuous combat, Luo Nan would be able to endure for 1 to 2 minutes, considering the enormous consumption from tearing open the spatial passageway. This was the most feasible plan that Luo Nan could find. It was the point of balance that Luo Nan had found between the cloud world and the normal world. As for how long he could endure if he truly unleashed his full strength, he still needed to continue experimenting. Unfortunately, it would not be possible this morning. The chase and treatment in the cloud world had seriously consumed Luo Nan's free time. He wanted to continue researching the problem of the mush-mouth ape with all his might, but for the sake of preventing Qin Ikuan and the others, who were in charge of security work, from sensing that something was amiss, he could only restrain his mind and retract his giant ape arms. On the other side of the cloud world, the mushed-mouth ape, who had been reduced to a test subject, wasn't cut in two. It had only fallen into the fog formed by the cross-border passage and was so distorted that it could not be seen. Only when Luo Nan sent the ape arm back did this enormous vicious beast materialize from incorporeal, returning to the cloudy world. From now on, you will be Yuan Yi. Luo Nan casually gave the mushed-mouth ape captive a name, and he temporarily set aside Cloud Peak. His soul body leaped out of the surface of the lake, and he rushed back to Ocean Sky Cloud City. He strove to cut into his normal routine. When the soul returned to the hotel, it was already 4:00 in the morning, and it was time for morning classes. Luo Nan was destined to not need to sleep. This kind of lifestyle wasn't very healthy, but he had to get used to it. Luo Nan hid in his bed and adjusted his breathing for a bit. Then he began his morning classes. He began with Daoyin. His movements were slow and relaxed, but he constantly touched the limits of what his fleshly body could bear. A thin layer of sweat formed on his body after a quarter of an hour, and he gradually entered an optimal state. Luo Nan entered a very rare state of relaxation. His body was tough and relaxed, and he went with the flow. It was as if he could easily complete any difficult movement. This method of combining Daoyin and yoga was the most suitable for restoring his physical strength and energy. The initial results were pretty good. Luo Nan seemed to be half asleep and half awake. He was already half in a meditative state. But he didn't know when it started, but his mind suddenly stirred restlessly. The scenes that happened in the cloud world, especially the scene of him being chased by the 5 mush-mouth apes, continuously leaped back and forth in his mind. Only through this method did Luo Nan truly understand what sort of state it was to be surrounded by perils. He was already very nervous when he personally experienced it, but when he truly recalled it, he discovered that the dangers that could consign him to eternal damnation were far greater than what he had perceived back then. It was hard for Luo Nan's mind to calm down at this point. He also knew that this sort of situation was most likely due to the effects of fire poison on his soul body. His injuries had yet to heal. His current situation wasn't too good. It must be known that the mind was in a mess, and the mind was in a mess, and the mind was in a mess. Luo Nan gazed at the dozen or so water droplets arranged in a row, and he suddenly slapped his forehead. He activated the recording function of the hexear to record the entire process of cultivation. He did this because he needed to be completely focused when forming the dripping sword. Sometimes, he clearly knew that a flaw had appeared, but it was hard to keep track of it. With the recording, he could review the process in time. It was beneficial for him to adjust his progress. Complete concentration, repeated practice, video review, and guidance from a famous teacher. Luo Nan practically possessed all of these requirements needed for precise practice. Naturally, his progress was godly. Luo Nan tested it out, and the recording function was turned on. Only now did he truly begin to practice. His training method was like an assembly line. First, he concentrated his energy on creating the core structure, the condensation ring. He created the maximum number of condensation rings within a preset amount of time, ranging from 100 to several hundred. Then, he began to add auxiliary structures to each condensation ring to form the complete dripping sword. Finally, he counted the number of complete dripping swords that remained. The requirements for this process were quite high. The exquisiteness of the condensation ring determined whether or not it could persist to the end. The various auxiliary structures, including the coordination between them, all had a direct effect on the lifespan of the dripping sword. Luo Nan was already familiar with the process, but due to the influence of his soul body's injuries, as well as the fact that he had to convert between civil and martial fire, there were many flaws in the beginning. 15 minutes passed, and only 122 complete dripping swords remained. Tisk, I've regressed. The recording this time had practically no value at all. Though Luo Nan was dissatisfied, he didn't delete the relevant recording. After all, in a combat environment, he might not always be full of spirit and energy, and his condition would be at its peak. 122 dripping swords would be 122. He could consider going a bit higher for today's match. 122 dripping swords flew out from a crack in the window under Luo Nan's mental control in the next moment. They soared straight up, quickly breaking through the city's traffic layer. They continued to climb until they entered the chaotic airflow of the upper troposphere. His sensing radius exceeded 20 kilometers, allowing his dripping swords to continue climbing, all the way until they entered the stratosphere. But that sort of environment would lose the meaning of training. Therefore, these 100 or so dripping swords stopped in the troposphere. They were like a school of fish swimming against the waves, spiraling and swimming. They needed to resist the low temperatures and violent airflow of high altitude. Sometimes, they also needed to depend on Luo Nan's mood. They swam up and down, accepting the test of life and death. Luo Nan could verify the firmness and stability of the dripping sword structure through this method. Only a dripping sword that passed this test was a qualified dripping sword. Luo Nan was already familiar with this. He could control the 100 or so fish as he washed and dressed at the same time. He was thankful for the hotel's allocated laundry facilities. His clothes, which were soaked with sweat last night, were now as clean as new. Luo Nan opened the door and left after dressing himself neatly. The door to the room next to him opened at nearly the same time. Chi Nikuan also put on his training clothes and came out to say good morning, Mr. Luo, let's go together. Together. How about the green oxygen running track of Acumen College? No problem. Chapter 444. Luo Nan and Chi Nikuan controlled their speed, spending around 20 minutes to enter Acumen College's campus. During this time, a school of fish was always active 10 kilometers above Luo Nan's head. A portion of them had already collapsed or turned into ice crystals under the continuous impact of the counterwave. However, there was also a portion that was quite tough. Even though a portion of the auxiliary structure had problems, the main condensation ring was able to maintain its stability. Even though the number of dripping swords continued to decrease, soon falling below 100 swords, maintaining this number from a distance consumed a considerable amount of soul strength. The consumption of energy was even more astonishing. Plus, Luo Nan had fought continuously last night. He hadn't gotten a good rest all this time. Right now, he needed absolute willpower to maintain a focused state. Right now, Luo Nan didn't pay much attention to the outside environment. He only traveled with Chi Nikuan. Otherwise, he would get hit by a car on the road. It would be very difficult for him to safely walk to the green oxygen track. In the following time, Luo Nan circled the track around the campus for around 10 kilometers. The dripping swordfish in the troposphere had been thoroughly inspected by the high-altitude turbulence and low temperature. All the defective products were eliminated, leaving only 10 swords in the end. Luo Nan was able to persist until this moment. Every single dripping sword, every single link on the dripping sword, including the main body and the auxiliary links, had reached a level of perfection in Luo Nan's cognitive level. Perhaps the condensed water beads were fragile, but their core structure and auxiliary structure were as stable as boulders. Unless Luo Nan broke off the support for them, or if the troposphere suddenly erupted with extreme weather such as a violent blizzard, they could completely persist there for 10 days to half a month and still maintain their structure intact. The success rate has dropped a bit, but the number of survivors is more or less the same. Luo Nan was quite satisfied with the results of today's morning exercise. Right now, a mere 10 dripping swords were no longer able to consume his soul strength. The long period of concentration swept away the restlessness brought about by the poison of fire. As his mind relaxed, the large production line of the living starry sky began to display its might once more. It produced an unending stream of soul strength, rapidly replenishing its reserves and increasing its accumulation a step further. His exhausted energy was gradually restored. Luo Nan let out a long breath. The breath formed a meter-long air arrow in the cold early winter air. It pierced through the air, traveling 7 or 8 steps away. It looked rather mysterious and colorful. At this time, there happened to be 2 young women who got up early for their morning jog. When they saw this scene, they exclaimed in surprise. One of them wore smart contact lenses. She blinked and captured this scene. But Luo Nan and Chi Nikuan had already run far away without looking back when they tried to strike up a conversation. A legendary master. Is he from our school? What a pity, one is too big and the other is too small. Whatever, I'll just post it on the school's website. The 2 girls chattered away, but Luo Nan and Chi Nikuan could hear them clearly. The latter praised softly, exhaling chi like an arrow, gathering and not scattering. Mr. Luo, your internal cultivation technique is progressing at a godly speed. Well said, Headmaster Shou. This is also the result of interference force. Luo Nan was already used to the constant interference effect of his soul strength on the material world. This was not only the case when his soul was in an out-of-body state, but it was also the case when his body and soul were present. This could help him familiarize himself with the subtleties of the material plane and harmonize his body and mind. Otherwise, even if he held a dagger or a gun, he wouldn't be able to make Shuelei breathe during the battle. This kind of training method was something Luo Nan realized himself. No one had taught him. However, Luo Nan found a bit of theoretical support after his exchange with Wan Ta last night. According to Wan Ta's law of creation, the order differed from person to person. People needed to have a keen perception of the internal and external environment. They needed a kind of long-term contemplation of the internal and external harmonization of the body and mind. From this point of view, Luo Nan's path was correct. He couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, cultivation still needed to communicate with people. He could see the road ahead clearly. After running another 2 or 3 kilometers, Chinikuan was a bit baffled. Mr. Luo, is your school this lively every day? Huh? Luo Nan followed Chinikuan's line of sight. His gaze pierced through the evergreen plants to the side of the green oxygen track and cast towards the nearby plaza. He saw people surging over there, signs waving in the air. There were at least 300 to 400 people gathered there. And there was an endless stream of people pouring in. The two were both ability users with sharp eyes and ears. They could see from afar that the signs over there had words like truth, transparency, and so on. Maybe the school did something stupid again? Luo Nan wasn't interested in this sort of thing at all. He continued to run forward. But there was another stream of people a few hundred meters away. It was a group of roughly 20-year-old young men and women. They whistled excitedly and waved signs as they passed through the long hallway. Hey, it seems like the scene is getting bigger and bigger. Luo Nan was curious as well. He lowered his head to look at his wristband and entered the school's network. He hadn't even opened the page when several notifications popped up. Luo Nan let out an "ah" when he saw the relevant content. He reached out his hand and smacked his forehead. Mr. Luo? Damn it. Prematurely aged. What? Today is Saturday. It's the weekend. I don't need to go to school. Yeah. Oh, this is a common occurrence. Chinikuan came to a realization. So Luo Nan had gotten the date mixed up. Their security team thought that Luo Nan had other plans. They didn't ask anything and just stayed with him in the hotel for the night. After all, he was a young man. Forget it. I'll just go with the flow. I'll go take a look at gear. The school cafeteria should be open today. Breakfast is on me. Brother Chin and the others, give me some face. Chinikuan laughed as he shook his head. I'll thank you on their behalf. However, it's better for everyone not to gather together in a public setting. Perhaps it will cause trouble for future assignments. I can help them get their meals. Okay. I'll choose a few special breakfast dishes. Luo Nan had completed today's training load. He led Chinikuan to the cafeteria. Chinikuan's gaze swept across the clusters of gathered students. Speaking of which, is there going to be a demonstration in the school right now? Yeah. But it's not just Acumen College. It's the entire city's colleges and universities. They're going to set a record for a citywide student demonstration. Luo Nan opened his electronic calendar and confirmed the time, November 17th, the 150th birthday of World University. Those seniors might want to organize some commemorative events. As for the theme of the demonstration, according to the notifications, it was mainly to express dissatisfaction with the transparency of government governance. Earthquakes, terrorist attacks, and many other recent public events. People urgently needed to know the truth, to put an end to the days of rumors flying everywhere. Chinikuan laughed after hearing Luo Nan's introduction. He was a bit disapproving. From his perspective, it was better to feign ignorance of these cruel truths. For example, if a certain person was in a bad mood, he could use infrasonic waves to wipe out the entire city. Did these students really want to know? Could they accept it? Luo Nan felt Chinikuan's gaze. He wasn't too clear on the specifics of Chinikuan's thoughts, but he could feel some sort of emotion. So he shrugged his shoulders and pointed in a different direction. How about we speed up a run in the school's cafeteria number 1? After a short breakfast time, the security personnel's work methods changed. Chinikuan no longer followed Luo Nan closely. Instead, he went into the darkness with his companions. Luo Nan was constantly being watched by several pairs of eyes. He couldn't tell the difference between protection and surveillance. Luo Nan needed to adapt to such a situation because this was the result of his own actions. Perhaps only when he didn't need to rely on external objects like the flying devil ray could he intimidate the majority of his enemies and protect the safety of himself and his family. Or perhaps he could be eliminated by others early on. Only then could he be free. Right now, Luo Nan could only feign ignorance. He didn't take the streetcar after eating. He walked step by step towards the depths of the campus. It took him around 20 minutes to reach the auditorium at the edge of the jungle. Any further and he would be in the wetlands jungle. The spacious space in front of the auditorium was the same as the other plazas. It was occupied by the senior students of various faculties. Some people even brought tents and utensils. It was like having a picnic. There was a high probability that they would bring this sort of equipment to the municipal plaza as long as they could set it up. A call came in at this time. It was Xie Junping. "Hey, Nanster. You met with Dean Wan yesterday?" Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. "You hired a new private detective?" "I'm sorry. I can't use my limited resources on you. I just came out from the orphanage. Dean Wan's evaluation of you is quite high." "The orphanage? Went to do morning classes?" "Yeah. Memorizing books and chanting scriptures. My mind will be clear for the entire day after I'm done." "Super awesome. How long was it?" 45 minutes. Luo Nan looked at his watch. It was only 7:30 in the morning right now. This meant that this bro had to get up at least 6 and hurry over to the orphanage to listen to classes. In a certain sense, this could be considered a rebirth, right? Dean Wan was certainly a master craftsman level teacher. To be able to correct a half-degenerate wastrel like Xie Junping to this step, the prodigal son's secret technique, the return of the prodigal son, should be nearly at the max level. Xie Junping asked him, "Where are you right now?" "I'm watching my seniors have a picnic in the auditorium plaza." "You're at school? You're also participating in today's parade?" "Sorry. I'm not that old. I'm not that bored either." "Humph. I really should have suggested letting some juniors who lack a sense of social responsibility come in and watch." "Okay, I'm rushing over. Everyone in the school's student union has their vacation cancelled. Let's meet before the parade." "I need something." "What's up?" "I can't explain it clearly over the phone." "Then come. I'm crossing the river. See you at Gear in a bit." "Oh, right. The interior renovation project will be suspended for next week." "Huh. I shouldn't have gone to the orphanage last night. I feel that it's not as pretty as that place. I need to think about it a bit more." "Yeah. I also feel that Dean Wan's design is super awesome. Actually, he's worried about raising funds every day. If you're willing to outsource the design and renovation, he might even bring the entire orphanage over to work." Luo Nan laughed involuntarily. "Okay. I'll think about it." Chapter 445. Luo Nan stood at the edge of the swamp lake in front of Gear. His nose twitched slightly. Aside from the fishy smell of water flowing through the air, there was also an indescribable smell. It was very faint, yet it lingered in the air without dispersing. The nose orifice was connected to the lungs. Luo Nan had already begun to practice the corresponding internal cultivation technique. His foundation was deep due to his year-round breathing exercises. His progress was extremely fast. Currently, his cultivation of the 5 zangs, 6 roots, and 9 apertures had reached the primary level. His liver, heart, spleen, lungs, eyes, tongue, mouth, and nose had all reached the primary level. Only the ear aperture and kidney chi still needed to be polished. Now he stood by the lake, his nostrils quivering and his mouth slightly open. His inner chi naturally nourished the corresponding organ structure of the human body, making the corresponding receptors more sensitive. The small chemical molecules floating in the air stimulated the relevant areas through the corresponding channels, activating the corresponding feelings and memories. His sense of smell and taste intertwined to form the basis of his judgment. It even formed a set of blurry images that reflected the relevant information. Perhaps Luo Nan suspected that this was a predetermined answer, but Luo Nan was still able to confirm that the source of this wave of relatively stimulating small molecules was the mush-mouthed ape tossing and turning at the bottom of the lake in the wee hours of the morning. It's hard to avoid getting caught in the mud. The deeper one cultivated, the more sensitive they would be to the changes in the external environment. The more detailed the information they collected, the closer their perception and judgment would be to the truth. Most of the time, it was beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. It was as if he had the eyes of a ghost that could see through the truth. Therefore, Luo Nan returned to gear. He wanted to see if there were too many traces left behind from midnight's violent summoning. If there were, he would clean up the loose ends to prevent attracting flies. As it turned out, he was right to come. Luo Nan's soul strength was like an incorporeal cloud that pervaded the void. He used his interference power to disperse the aura traces around the swamp lake as much as possible. Then, he entered the passageway at the bottom of the lake and wiped away some of the burnt mud. At that time, the temperature at the bottom of the lake was indeed very high. Even if the mush-mouthed ape had crossed the boundary between the two worlds, its destructive power was still quite shocking. This was very good. However, it wouldn't be fun if they were discovered early on. Fortunately, Luo Nan had to clean up gear and its surroundings every few days, sweeping away all the monitoring devices. Otherwise, it would be even more troublesome. Xia Junping had yet to arrive by the time Luo Nan walked out of the passageway at the bottom of the lake. Xia Junping sat in the corner of the bar outside the passageway, waiting. He didn't stay idle either. With a thought, the 10 raindrop swords circling the top of the troposphere flew over one after another. They passed through the door as if they had a mind of their own. By the time they reached Luo Nan, the water droplets were full, sparkling and translucent. Of course, these water droplets were formed later on. Under the harsh environmental test at the top of the troposphere, it was difficult for the external water droplets to exist for a long time. They could only be driven by the strong structural framework to ensure an endless stream of water droplets. Perhaps, this was the true killing move of the water drop sword. Luo Nan pondered over the concrete scenario of facing the enemy. Unfortunately, he was unable to find an opportunity to experiment, so he stopped thinking about it. To him, there were other uses for these 10 water drop swords that he had spent so much effort to condense and test them. Come on, it's time for nutrition. The electric light between his eyebrows flickered, and the external neuron in the form of a dripping sword emerged from his skull. The electric fire that lingered around it suddenly forked and struck the other 10 dripping swords. The water droplets instantly evaporated, but the structural framework was still there. It even formed a subtle connection with the external neuron. The external neuron trembled, miraculously projecting its current structure onto the other 10 dripping swords. Similarly, the other 10 dripping swords also mapped their respective structural details onto the external neuron. Just as he had experienced before, the higher his cultivation, the more different his perception became. When one progressed to a certain degree, it would already exceed the scope of common sense. It would even subvert one's worldview. Luo Nan's cultivation progress was extremely fast. It was not excessive for Qi Nikuan to praise him with words like godly speed. At the same time, his perception of the world was endlessly deepening. His current perspective and viewpoint were somewhat different from what they were a week ago. The difference was even more obvious after 10 days to half a month. This kind of change was perfectly embodied on the dripping sword. It was embodied on the structural circuit constructed by the external neuron. Luo Nan's attainments in the dripping sword could be said to be at a high starting point and a high level. He had just entered the door, but he had already surpassed the efforts of the vast majority of people. The condensation ring mold he had constructed for the external neuron earlier was a divine item that he had miraculously obtained in his peak state. It broke through the boundary between the mental and material planes in one fell swoop. It was the core that allowed Luo Nan to fully display the circulation of his soul strength. But as time passed, Luo Nan's soul strength continued to rise. His 9 orifices and 6 roots technique continued to perfect, and the level of his perception grew increasingly deep and rich. Looking back at the divine item from back then, there were some places that didn't seem to be able to withstand scrutiny. It would have been fine if the dripping sword was a consumable technique that could be used and thrown away at will. But he used the external neuron as a molding material, preserving the structural circuit for a long period of time. In this way, even the slightest flaw would be reflected in his mind, stimulating and reminding him at all times. He couldn't bear it no matter what. Right now, the external neuron was connected to the energy of the other 10 dripping swords. Their configurations reflected each other, superimposing and resonating. Due to the difference in materials, the skeletal structure of the other dripping swords was gradually unable to withstand it. They disintegrated one after another. The external neuron was much better, but it also referred to the structural changes of the other dripping swords and carried out minute adjustments. It sought the most stable structure under the destruction of resonance, ensuring that it was sturdier and more stable. Luo Nan closed his eyes. He paid attention to this process purely through his senses, experiencing the most exquisite aspects within. Luo Nan had discovered this method by chance. It made full use of the external neuron's marvelous intelligence, allowing it to possess a sturdy structure while still being able to guarantee continuous plasticity, striving for perfection. It also guaranteed that Luo Nan's research on the dripping sword would always be active, seeking change, and absolutely not sticking to convention. Oh, Dean Wan had said similar words before. Luo Nan felt that this was the right path. He couldn't see the end for a while. Xia Junping finally arrived after the structures of the 10 dripping swords had completely disintegrated. He rushed back directly after the morning class. He was still wearing a set of archaic exercise clothes. It matched his excessively young face, making him look a bit comical. But if one only looked at his face, one would feel that he was glowing with health. He was brimming with energy. He was completely different from the bewildered nocturnal creature of the past. Why didn't you pick up my call just now? Luckily I guessed that you were here. I'm working hard. Xia Junping's greatest benefit after officially entering the cultivation sequence was that he could normally communicate with a few unconventional matters. Xia Junping's acceptance of this was quite high, and he was quite interested. Speaking of which, with our friendship, don't you think that we should exchange information? Let's wait until you've truly entered the door. Luo Nan was really worried that Xia Junping would become a chatterbox. He took the initiative to change the topic. What do you need from me? Xia Junping was a bit hesitant. I'm afraid that you won't like to hear it. Luo Nan raised his head to look. He more or less understood what was going on when he saw Xia Junping's expression. It's related to this place? Xia Junping sighed. He sat on an empty chair in front of the bar. The ownership of gear will be decided soon. We'll enter the final bidding phase tomorrow. An announcement might be made on Monday. Do you want to go take a look? There's no need to participate in things that I can't decide on. Ho ho, your tone is getting bigger and bigger. You really don't want to go? Luo Nan laughed as he shook his head. Xia Junping sighed once more. He moved his elbows back and rested them on the bar counter. He raised his head in an exhausted manner. There's been such a huge change in the middle, but both sides are actually able to hold on until the end. Right now, the Construction Society is still quite confident. On the other hand, the Divine Research Society's previous financial backer has withdrawn his investment and merged with the Construction Society. This has dealt quite a blow to them. The newly invested LRCF is lukewarm. There's no sign of an increase in the stakes. They haven't even given up yet. I've looked for Tang Yi quite a few times, but I haven't gotten any clear words. Sigh. With his current friendship with Lady Du, it would be great if he was still the president. LCRF. Life Fund. The corner of Luo Nan's lips curled up. Greedy capitalistic old wolves. Those in power are vainly trying to grasp power at straws. Xia Junping gave him a blank look. At the very least, my old man throws money in from time to time. He has a bit of authority. Now it was Luo Nan's turn to dissuade him. The construction society is up to no good. The LRCF isn't a good thing either. Since it's not a good thing for us to have anyone take over, why bother with this? These words make one's heart go cold. So it turns out that we've worked for nothing? Xie Junping laughed and turned his head. Speaking of which, what are you planning on doing in the end? Me? Luo Nan raised his hand to point at his nose. Conserve energy and prepare for war. Don't joke around. I'm being serious. Luo Nan's posture didn't change. He laughed involuntarily. Am I not being serious? It's true that I can't choose who will take over. But I will certainly properly communicate with those who take over what they want to do. It doesn't matter which method I use. Luo Nan's gaze pierced through the bottom of the lake and cast into the distance. It was in the direction of the large living area. Ocean Sky Cloud City was directly facing this place. Xie Junping followed Luo Nan's gaze and looked forward. All he saw was the turbid and dark bottom of the lake. He blinked his eyes. He didn't understand what was going on. Though I don't understand what you're talking about, it doesn't feel too good. Things won't get complicated, right? I hope so. After all, I don't want to complicate matters. There are far too many vexing matters. Luo Nan sighed. His fingertips moved to the space between his eyebrows. The external neuron mapped the relevant software interface, revealing his notepad. There were a bunch of unfinished matters on it. Big ones. Small ones. Things that could be spoken of. Things that couldn't be spoken of. Things that could be resolved. Things that couldn't be resolved. There were so many things that needed to be broken through. Luo Nan wasn't in the mood to continue chatting when he saw these recorded matters. He stood up and waved his hand at Xie Junping. You go organize the parade. I'm leaving. Don't. The main character will only appear at the most crucial moment. The various teams might not even be able to make it to the city center in the morning with today's scene. The most important moment is in the afternoon. Of course, the best time is still at night. I still want to take a nap here. Chapter 446. This was not the first time Xie Junping had spoken of the miracles of gear. Luo Nan did not find it strange. After all, Xie Junping belonged to his formatting theory system. It was not a big deal for Luo Nan to agree with gear. Moreover, the formatting theory system was in a constantly expanding state. The range of influence and interference grew wider and wider, and the levels grew richer and richer. The corresponding feedback grew more and more abundant. Luo Nan, as the master, had eaten his fill. How could he not allow others to drink some soup? Under these circumstances, Xie Junping had unwittingly mutated his root receptacle. He possessed a foundation that exceeded that of ordinary people. Wanta's awakening ceremony was tantamount to capturing Xie Junping's root receptacle, leading him into the door and activating his potential. Surpassing Du Yong on this foundation was a normal phenomenon. As for how things would develop in the future and what they would develop into, Luo Nan needed to analyze the root and make a clear direction before he could make a judgment. Luo Nan drew a profile of Xie Junping in accordance with the artifact mechanism discrimination technique taught to him by the gym master. Xie Junping's life sketches correspondingly appeared in Luo Nan's system. Xie Junping's life sketches became clearer and more penetrating. However, Luo Nan also thought that Xie Junping was a member of the formatting theory system. As for Wanta's law of creation, it was also a system. Luo Nan needed to pay attention to whether or not there would be problems with two systems at the same time. He had a pensive look. I need to have a chat with Dean Wan later. Xie Junping did not know how many thoughts went through Luo Nan's mind in the time it took for him to turn his face. He mistakenly believed that Luo Nan was the same as him and wanted to ask for guidance from Wanta. He rushed to recommend Luo Nan. Let Dean Wan teach you how to coordinate. He teaches different techniques to everyone in the morning class every day. He pays attention to them at the same time and gives pointers at the same time. He is precise and appropriate. Not a single one is missing. His ability to multitask is truly amazing. This was the second time Luo Nan heard someone recommend Wanta's coordinate technique. The last time was from Di Weiwu. One could imagine how deep of an impression this skill left on people. He was not pretentious. He nodded and said, "I will learn it if I have the chance." Xia Junping chuckled and reached out to grab Luo Nan's shoulder. This isn't a skill that can be grasped just by learning. Dean Wan said that from the beginning, one needs to go through 6 stages: temperance, habit, ritual, precision, efficiency, and coordinate. Each stage requires a large amount of practice. It takes a long time to form habits and instincts. It takes at least 3 to 5 years. So you were talking nonsense just now? Of course not, I just think that ability users like you would be more likely to accept it than us. Also, before you learn it, don't you need my help? Xia Junping grinned cheekily. He put one arm around Happy's shoulder and used the other to pat his chest. Look here, Xia Junping from Heaven Crystal Creatures. Thank you, young Master Xia. No, Nanster, please call me Director Xia. Oh. Xia Junping's nose was about to touch the sky. Right now, I'm already the CMO of Sky Crystal Biology's research and development subsidiary. The company's current market value is 5 billion. From a standard perspective, I've officially entered the cultivation sequence of Sky Crystal Biology. CMO, Chief Marketing Officer? Yes. The Chief Marketing Officer of a drug R&D company is a pharmaceutical sales representative? Xia Junping pushed him away. Enough. Other than those people in the company, I'm the first one to tell you. Is this how a brother should express himself? You've got to be shocked a bit. Luo Nan clicked his tongue twice. Okay. You can hold it in until now. You can hold it in. I have to thank Dean Wan. Actually, I was about to explode when I heard the news last night. But today, I did my morning classes and read the scriptures. It seems like I'm fine again. Luo Nan quietly watched him act pretentiously until this fellow couldn't help but grin. Hurry up if you want to congratulate me. A company with a market value of 5 billion couldn't be considered top-notch in the eyes of a rich second generation like Xia Junping. But the information behind it was indeed worth celebrating. I remember you saying that your family's old man would rather hire a professional manager and set up a charity fund to raise money than let you take over. How many years? Cough. How many days ago was that? That's why there's an old saying. A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at in a new light. Look, the living example is right here. So you blinded your family's old man's eyes? Xia Junping choked and couldn't speak. He extended his hand and pointed, but soon he laughed. That's right. The old man was testing to see if his eyes were blind or not. Luo Nan understood. It was clear that Xia Junping's recent performance of being reborn had reignited the flames of hope in his old man. Xia Junping took out a company with a market value of 5 billion for his own son to practice with. There was no need to say anything. This was his own father. Luo Nan sincerely wished. The old man isn't young anymore. I hope that his eyes will always be clear for the rest of his life. I thank your entire family. Xia Junping was already disinclined to get angry. Actually, he really did want to thank Luo Nan. Ever since he became a partner with Luo Nan, it seemed that some marvelous things would always happen. The people he saw, the things he experienced, made him ponder over a few questions he had never thought about before. Unknowingly, he had already changed his usual trajectory. Thinking about it, if it wasn't for the mysterious feeling he had when he was at Gear, Luo Nan wouldn't have been able to abandon his rich nightlife, doing things like meditation, chanting, researching magical arrays, and so on, no matter how unfathomable Dean Wan's soul awakening technique was. If it wasn't for this change, his old man wouldn't have given him this sort of nurturing test for him to inherit the family business. Perhaps he would have been like those drunken seniors of his. He would have relied on the so-called foundation to muddle through his days, until he tossed his last breath around in drugs, fine wine, and women. Perhaps Xie Junping felt that this was pretty good in the past, but now he was faced with Luo Nan, Shui Lei, and all sorts of other miraculous characters and events. His past days seemed too low. It should be better to take a few more steps forward while his own passion had yet to fade. Xie Junping suddenly laughed in spite of himself. He embraced Luo Nan's shoulder once more. Do you know what the biggest change is after I became CMO? Please advise me, Chief Xie. In the past, I spent my old man's money. There were many times when I couldn't find a reason to spend it, and the amount was very awkward. But now, I'm spending the company's money. All I need to do is say, I can earn it back, and it's fine. This is the privilege of a pharmaceutical representative. Your family's old man will cry, right? I feel like I'm holding onto a project that's guaranteed to be profitable. Of course, convincing a bunch of stubborn old fools will take a bit of time. Are you sure? I'm sure, and I'm sure. After all, the only person I really want to convince is my old man. I understand him all too well. Ever since I was young, he always told me this: people always need a little motivation. After all, our vision is only so far. Xie Junping straightened his arm and raised his thumb, squinting his eyes as he took aim. Start with small things that are easy to solve. Get rid of them first and get a sense of accomplishment. It's the same as stepping on the gas pedal. Then you'll enter the fast lane. Under the effect of inertia, you'll keep doing it until the next motivation arrives. So I don't need to promote a lot of new drugs. I don't need to double the company's profits either. I just need to perform a bit better than my previous terrible performance, and the second motivation will beckon me. Oh, I think I used this method when I was learning from Dean Wan. Hey, are you listening? Luo Nan was dazed for a bit. He nodded and said, make your family's old man happy, and I'll give you a $5 billion company as motivation. Is that right? More or less. Then I wish you an early improvement. Luo Nan looked at his watch, waved his hand, and walked out. Hey, let's talk about the $5 thing. Xie Junping finally had a channel to vent his excitement. He grabbed onto Luo Nan, not wanting to let go. It's not like you're going to have a parade. Where are you going on the weekend? I got pointers from your family's old man. I'll go out and put it into practice. Huh. I'll find the easiest problem to deal with. I'll get some motivation or something. Chatting really did help open up one's mind. Luo Nan unwittingly sorted out a bit of a thread from a pile of vexed matters. Right now he was faced with a pile of vexed matters that could be roughly divided into 3 types. The first type was the type that had the heart but lacked the strength. For example, he had to clear his grandfather's name and make formatting theory a prominent school of thought. He would practically have to make the entire world his enemy. It was absolutely impossible to accomplish in a short amount of time. This included Quantum Corporation, the Ability User Headquarters, the Order of Justice, and other new and old grudges. These were the main bodies that gave him enormous pressure. The second type was the type that worked for a long time. For example, cultivating, studying, supplementing his general knowledge, and so on. It was hard to see results in a short period of time, but he had to spend time on them every day. He could not slack off in the slightest. The third type was the type that could be resolved. Most of them were temporary missions, as well as small troubles that he encountered on a daily basis. These 3 types of matters were tightly interwoven together. They gave him pressure, took up his time, and distracted his mind. In the end, they destroyed his state of mind, causing him to be constantly affected by negative emotions. He was constantly fretful and restless. Right now Luo Nan was already clear that he was unable to completely eliminate the pressure. It was also impossible for him to lower the quality of his cultivation. This problem would inevitably exist for a long time. But looking at it from another angle, what he could do under these circumstances was actually simpler: cut the tangled hemp with a sharp blade. He could use the fastest speed to resolve all the miscellaneous matters. He could sever the messy branches that were distracting his mind and let his energy return to the main path. He could also receive incentives in passing. Luo Nan pulled out a thread with great difficulty. He wouldn't waste any more time. He bid farewell to Xie Junping and walked out of gear. He took a look at the credit balance in his personal account. In terms of wealth, a 7-digit number was quite pleasing to the mind and body. He needed to make some extra money faster. Trigate Securities business wasn't too difficult, and it had the highest quality price ratio. Once it was completed, there would be a large amount of income. Perhaps he could even give the Devil Ray a down payment. It could be said that this was related to combat strength. It was necessary to speed up the progress. Working overtime on the weekends. That's it. Luo Nan used the Hexier to open a high-precision city map and loaded the team's search data onto it. He could see that the search range had expanded to the core city area in half a month. There were results, but there were also negative results. According to the latest intelligence, there was a high probability that the degree of invasion of the mutants had risen from the first stage of external infiltration to the second stage of primary infection. On a level that they were unaware of, there was even the possibility of a third stage of a new type of mutant. Luo Nan was quite baffled. Things had already reached this point. The Xia city government was still sealing off the news. It was quite shameless. Chapter 447. Luo Nan never expected that things would actually develop to this step when he first accepted the mission of preserving the genes and ecology of the native species. Though Luo Nan hadn't put much thought into this matter over the past half-month, he had still borrowed his knowledge to participate in a few meetings. He knew very well that he couldn't complete the mission alone. Therefore, for the first time in more than 10 days, he took the initiative to contact his nominal partner, Peony of the Hidden Indigo firm. Luo Nan walked through Ink's channel. This crow believer had been following by Peony's side recently. Using Ink as a medium was undoubtedly the most convenient. But when Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts shifted to absorb Ink's perceptual information, what appeared before his eyes was a world of darkness. Luo Nan spent a few seconds to get a general understanding of his surroundings. This was an alley between tall buildings. The fire escape ladder attached to the building and the automatic conveyor belt connected the building made the already narrow area even more unbearably crowded. This kind of dark and cramped area usually belonged to the recycling layer. In the shadow of the alley, a certain someone was leaning against the wall on the inside of the corner of the fire escape. The narrow corner could not accommodate her long legs, so she had one leg propped up and the other extended out of the staircase, half of her leg dangling in the air. In this way, Luo Nan could naturally see that the person was actually wearing a pair of cotton slippers. They looked fat and clumsy. It was a stark contrast to his handsome leather jacket and skinny jeans. Oh, the snake-pattern pointy high heels that were thrown askew to the side. Although the color was flirtatious and full of nightclub style, she should be able to hold it up. This sister was now shaking the bottle of wine with a mysterious smile on her lips. She looked like she had a hangover. Needless to say, she definitely looked good. But the problem was this nightclub girl who seemed to have just had a crazy night of fun and couldn't find her home. Was she really that free and easy, yet strong and shrewd Peony? If it weren't for the obvious difference in height and facial features, Luo Nan would have believed that he was looking at Cat Eyes, who was drowning her sorrows in alcohol. Under Luo Nan's command, Ink's claws hooked onto the railing of the staircase on the other side of the building. It observed from above. Perhaps she was looking too directly, but Peony suddenly raised her head and met the crow's pitch-black eyes. She raised the wine bottle and gestured. Have a good weekend. Against Ink, or against Pat Block? It was most likely the latter. And so Luo Nan knew that it was very likely that he had underestimated Peony's level of keenness. Or perhaps Peony had been feigning ignorance all along, only revealing clues when she was hungover. Luo Nan certainly had to put 120% effort into dealing with this kind of woman with deep and sharp schemes. He didn't want to leave any clues for her to use against him, so he communicated with Peony through the rubber band on Ink's ankle. Moreover, he asked a question he already knew the answer to. "Good morning. Did you just search this area?" "I didn't. The door was blocked, so I snuck out." "Hee hee, why do you look like you've been caught red-handed?" Luo Nan did his best to make his tone sound like that of an adult. He learned from Crag Burst and joked a bit too much. Peony responded calmly, "Probably. But are you finally free this weekend and ready to officially join the crew and take a makeup break?" "Hey, don't ignore my contribution." "Forget it." Luo Nan knew that Peony was looking down on his behavior of not putting in any effort during this time. Frankly speaking, he really hadn't put in any effort ever since he reported the whereabouts of the Winghand Bloodbat. He had received over $1 million in remuneration so far. At least half of it was a bit of a hot potato. Peony didn't bicker with him about this. She just shook the bottle again. "I can't keep you company today. I have something to do. Do you know? The World University's birthday is a holiday that belongs to us." Luo Nan was actually speechless. That's right. When he first met Peony, she came out of Acumen College. It seemed that she was a graduate student of some professor. She could be counted among the ranks of university students. Speaking up to this point, Luo Nan actually wanted to investigate Peony's background more than once. The problem was that he had to take Her Majesty Empress Wu's face into consideration. He could only act muddle-headed for now. "You want to participate in the parade too? Speaking of which, Crow, you pay a lot of attention to the lives of students. I'm just surprised that you're not doing proper work." "Mr. Crow." "Oh right, you can't add a suffix, right? Then, Mr. Partner, humans haven't evolved to the point where they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without sleep or rest. Humans are very weak. They get tired. We find time to rest. We find fun for ourselves. It is because of this that it is interesting and wonderful. So, don't obliterate the final value of human society." Luo Nan was speechless once more. He looked at her appearance. "Could it be that, you've fallen out of love, right? Don't read too much into it, Mr. Partner. I'm enjoying my current state. Unfortunately, I can only get drunk for a while." Peony faced Crow from afar. She shook the wine bottle once more, and then she drained it in one gulp. The wine bottle smashed against the wall with a crash, and then it fell down the stairs. In the end, it was smashed into smithereens. Peony stood up against the wall. She lowered her head and curled her lips in disgust. So ugly. She was referring to the cotton slippers on her feet. They were blue-checkered men's slippers. They were old, and Luo Nan had a few pairs at home. The old and mediocre outer appearance really didn't match well with Peony's slender and well-proportioned feet. Speaking of which, could it be that this person became a mistress and was blocked at the door by the main wife? Did she run away in a panic? Elite women played this game these days. Well, it seemed to be common in television dramas. In reality, this was probably true love. It was a pity for those spare tires and men who admired goddesses. Luo Nan didn't make any moral judgments. In any case, he wasn't the one taking over. However, his feelings toward Peony had changed a bit. The element of looking up to and admiring her had lessened a bit, and he felt a bit more realistic. They were all ordinary people. Right now, he was a bit worried about Peony's state. It wasn't safe for a great beauty to stay on the recycling stratum when she was hungover, even in broad daylight. As for Peony's personal strength, he still had no idea. "Hey, where are you going?" Peony didn't answer. She turned her head and looked around. Finally, she saw her high heels lying crookedly to the side. She chuckled and casually kicked off the cotton slippers on her feet. She fitted her feet with the most suitable decorations. The bewitching patterns and shapes instantly drew out lines that were pleasing to the eye. Peony seemed to instantly regain her usual aura after putting on the shoes that belonged to her. She laughed again and waved her hand at Crow above her. Then she staggered her steps and walked out of the alley. She's definitely right. She's pretending to be calm. Luo Nan pondered over Peony's state of mind as he urged Crow to follow her. The alley went all the way up, slowly going from the recycling stratum to a normal street block. Perhaps the statistics of the public security department were far too accurate, or perhaps Peony had the talent to act in melodramatic dramas. It wasn't unexpected that such a great beauty would bewitch the eyes of some people. In the shadows of the building, a tall and coarse young man brushed shoulders with Peony. When he looked at her from the front, his eyes nearly popped out. He turned his head to look at her back and was stunned for a few seconds. In the end, his heart was clouded by lust. He turned around and chased after her, chuckling as he struck up a conversation. "Beautiful, where are you going?" Peony didn't pay any attention to him, but the young man's skin was thick enough. He followed closely and didn't let go. "Look at you. You didn't drink to your heart's content last night, right? I know a good place. Let's continue another round." Peony continued to move forward, but an inexplicable smile seeped out from the corner of her lips. The young man saw the side of the beauty's face suddenly come alive because of her smile, and he became more and more enchanted. He raised his hand, wanting to hook it around Peony's shoulder. Then he heard a slightly hoarse voice at this time. "I know that all life here has never cultivated properly." "Huh?" The young man's nose was already smelling the fragrance of a fragrant body mixed with the smell of alcohol. From his perspective, this was the smell of desire. Then, the stairs came head-on towards him. Thump. The young man simply slammed into the stairs. He didn't move an inch, fainting. Peony didn't even turn her head. She continued to stagger forward, occasionally leaning on the wall. She chanted unhurriedly as she walked. Persevering in the 5 desires, infatuated with love, giving birth to anger. Using all desires and karma, falling into the 3 evil paths. Within the 6 pleasures of reincarnation, suffering all bitter poisons. The minute form of conception, constantly growing from generation to generation. What the hell? Luo Nan didn't understand half of what he heard. He just felt that it was like some sort of Buddhist scripture, and the color of the words and sentences made him feel uncomfortable. Peony's footsteps came to a halt just as he was baffled. She wasn't far from the mouth of the alley. The morning sunlight cut through the gaps between the tall buildings, miraculously falling at the end of the long alley ahead. Over there was a relatively bustling street. The stream of people passed through, and the clamor entered the ears. Ink folded its wings and stopped on a certain window sill above the mouth of the alley. It continued to stare at her. But Luo Nan saw Peony smile inexplicably. She directly stepped out of the mouth of the alley, reflecting the slanting sunlight. Her smile was brilliant and bright, devoid of any depression or filth. Just like this, she naturally blended into the surging stream of people on the side of the street. However, the most eye-catching thing right now was a group of university students marching toward the City Hall Plaza. Luo Nan wasn't interested in this. He felt that the current Peony seemed to be easier to communicate with, so he asked, "You're planning on spending the day in the City Hall Plaza? Then do you have any information?" Clap, clap, clap. Clear and resounding applause rang out. Peony stood by the side of the road, forcefully applauding the marching group. She shouted loudly, "Unity!" Her drunken and wanton appearance was very annoying, but as a beauty, she had special privileges. Most of the people in the marching group were stupefied, but there were still quite a few young men who laughed loudly in agreement when they saw the encouragement of a great beauty like Peony. Unity. Peony continued to applaud with all her might. She leaned forward slightly, arched her back, and clapped her hands red. It was as if she was already immersed in the enthusiastic atmosphere. Then she shouted loudly once more, "Honor!" She was a beauty again, and she was so sincere. This time, there were even more people who responded. The sound waves had already converged into form. Honor. Faint beads of sweat appeared on Peony's forehead. She simply tore off her leather jacket and draped it over her arm. Her upper body was just a thin shirt, and it was completely unable to conceal her beautiful lines. However, what truly stirred people's hearts was her wanton and bright smile. Her snow-white teeth were revealed beneath her beautiful lips. They were so splendid. She walked into the marching group with large strides amidst this sort of smile. She was like the most familiar of friends. She opened her arms as if it was a matter of course, and she placed them on the shoulders of two students. The students just so happened to be a man and a woman. Both of them were stupefied. But at this moment, the screams and applause of the others shook the windows of the surrounding tall buildings to the point of droning. Peony faced the sky and howled amidst this wave of sound. Youth! The hearts of the marching group and the surrounding spectators had already been stirred by this dazzling beauty. Most of the people were already at a loss for words. They just screamed in response. Then everyone saw the arm that pointed to the sky. Victory! Chapter 448. This Crazy Woman. Luo Nan never imagined that a beautiful woman with the style of an elite like Peony would play so wildly after getting drunk. The most important thing was that she had super powerful rallying power. Even the citizens on both sides of the street were stirred up by the scene before their eyes. Quite a few people applauded, whistled, or gave thumbs up to the parade. The atmosphere and emotions of each side interweaved and collided, pushing the entire street to a state of climax. Luo Nan didn't know what to do in this situation. Muddle-headedly following in the air for half a block, Peony's interest actually increased rather than decreased. She was truly in high spirits from playing. In the end, Luo Nan felt that he really couldn't keep up with her anymore. He called out in secret, "Hey, are you planning on marching all the way to the municipal plaza?" Upon hearing this, Peony raised her head. Disregarding her current situation of being the center of attention, she extended her hand and pointed straight at the ink in the air. Amidst another wave of cheers, she laughed loudly. "Bet your college life on it. Do it. Damn, this woman is really crazy." Though he said this, Luo Nan was actually quite envious. First, it was Peony's innate talent as a natural leader. Her affinity, rallying power, and inciting power were all off the charts. With just a few vague words, she was able to make thousands of students and citizens dance with her baton. Secondly, it was probably that wanton and unrestrained attitude. This woman clearly hid deep gloomy emotions in her heart, but the moment she walked into the crowd, it was as if all the obstacles had been swept away. Looking at her smile, it was as if there was bright sunshine shining directly in. Should he call her scheming or strong-willed? In any case, this was completely different from using alcohol to vent one's emotions. Cat eyes should seriously learn. Though Luo Nan was the least qualified to say these words. Luo Nan's main body had just walked out of Acumen College while he was paying attention to his partners going on strike. But where should he go next? He stood at the school gate, hesitating. Peony was the one in charge of communicating with Tri-Gate security. Without this link, Luo Nan would be unable to receive support from that side. Was he really going to wander around the city alone and cast his net a few times? Luo Nan's wristband suddenly vibrated. There was a call coming in, and there was even a video request. Luo Nan swept a glance and rushed to connect, and on the virtual screen, Luo Shuqing's face was serious but pale. She did not look well. "Where did you sleep last night?" "Not in Blue Bay." No, I'm at Ocean Sky Cloud City." Luo Nan answered cautiously. "What for?" "It's mainly because it's more convenient for me to go to school today, so I stayed with a few friends nearby. I forgot that it's Saturday. I'm at the school gate now." Luo Nan felt that there was nothing to hide. He even raised his hand to shine a circle in all directions to show his sincerity. He let his aunt see the surrounding environment. Even with his attitude, Luo Shuqing's expression was still serious. She seemed to be asking and confirming, was it Moya who was in Blue Bay last night? She seems to be there quite often recently. Luo Nan absolutely wouldn't take the initiative to admit that he had contacted Mo Ye last night, so he spoke vaguely. But even so, his aunt did not let him off easily. Her tone was unusually stern. You clearly know that Mo Ye has been staying out with those scoundrels and hasn't returned, yet you still make things convenient for her. Do you think she's not having enough fun? How could I? Luo Nan cried out, feeling wronged. My sister wants the access rights. I can't just not give it to her. Recently, I had been living in the Nade district, so how could I have the time to care about Blue Bay? I haven't cleaned it for a long time. That depends on the situation. That's your house. It's passed down from your ancestors. My heart hurts when I think about how it's been messed with by those fellows who don't know what's good for them. Take back your access rights. What was going on? It must be said that his aunt had been extremely dissatisfied with Mo Ye staying out at night recently, but she didn't have any intentions of squeezing her daughter's living space outside. She couldn't bear it today? Luo Nan scratched his head a bit when he saw his aunt's unsightly expression. But he knew that he absolutely couldn't go against the Grand Secretary's will right now. He hurriedly said, "Don't be angry. Taking it back is just a matter of operation. I'll do it right away. Wait for me to leave." Huh? You're in Blue Bay right now? Luo Nan finally discovered that the background of the video was a bit familiar. He wiped his cold sweat. He never thought that his aunt would actually get up early in the morning and kill her way to Blue Bay community to block the door. Clearly, his aunt had lost all patience with Mo Ye's lifestyle. Even if she carried the title of a feudal parent, she still wanted to forcefully intervene. Seriously, is my sister still alive? She ran off with her guitar. There's no one over there. Then I'll send you the passkey. You can deal with it as you see fit. No need. Why would I need the passkey for a house under your name? Aunt and I can't differentiate between inside and outside. Luo Shuqing clearly knew that Luo Nan was deliberately trying to be obedient, but this scene was far too rare. Even though Luo Shuqing was in a terrible mood, she still couldn't help slowing down her tone. There's no need to curry favor and act cute here. I don't buy it. Mo Ye's way of doing things is very excessive. You, her accomplice, won't be able to escape. Of course, there's also Mo Peng. I remember every single good deed you three have done. Let's go back and talk about them one by one. Please calm your anger. There's nothing to say. As long as you can make my sister fully realize her mistakes, I'll be willing to accept a few beatings. Luo Nan could sell out his sister in minutes without any pressure. And this sort of jesting and joking method was much better than being a yes-man. Luo Shuqing finally hooked her lips. You've become quite glib lately. Do you have a girlfriend? Luo Nan blurted out, how is that possible? He had learned quite a few dirty jokes from Papercut and Cragburst. Cat Eyes was also someone who dared to say anything. Mixing around with that lawless ability user would cause some changes in his speech habits. And this seemed to be the most effective way, right? Luo Shuqing really did divert his attention. I heard Mo Peng say that you have quite a good luck with women at Acumen College. He's just jealous that I'm being taken care of by my senior. Okay, I know. No matter how charming the children of the Luo family are, there's no problem with their hearts. However, you need to learn some skills in getting along with people. Don't be so straightforward. You'll hurt yourself and others. That's not good. Yes, you're right. It's not a problem for you to have a few more friends. But don't learn from your sister. Don't fall head first into those circles. I won't. I won't. Luo Nan laughed dryly. He said a few more words and finally hung up the phone. He didn't stop after that. He immediately found Mo Ye's number and dialed it. However, there was no response from the other side. Did I just lose contact? What kind of trouble did I get myself into? Luo Nan called twice, but he didn't get a response. He couldn't help but scratch his head. His aunt's emotions were controlled quite well when she was talking to him. But if she wasn't truly furious, she wouldn't have vented her anger on him. Luo Nan was a bit regretful right now. He should have made a trip to Blue Bay last night when he passed through the River Wu district to understand the situation. He paced a few steps in front of the school gate, his hand pressed to his ear. He considered finding a skilled expert like bamboo pole to lock onto Amoya's position. Was this making a mountain out of a molehill? His wristband vibrated just as he hesitated. He subconsciously connected the call and Amoya's voice came through. Chapter 449. You're looking for me? Luo Nan let out a sigh of relief when he heard Amoya's voice. Then his anger flared up. You're the one who's looking for me, to take the blame. What are you talking about? Amoya's background was noisy. The sound of a piano and drums joined together. It seemed like someone was calling her. She responded with two sounds before turning around to talk to Luo Nan. I'm rehearsing right now. I'll contact you in a bit. Luo Nan looked up at the sky and sighed. Amoya, you sure have a big heart. The high priest has exploded and you still have the heart to rehearse. Are you going to hold a concert for 10,000 people? 100,000 people level. Screw your 100,000. You're dreaming. Yeah, I'm dreaming. I'm hanging up. Amoya. Why don't you try calling my name again? So what? Amoya, you tricked me. Tisk, little brother, you're such a good boy. Come over to the municipal plaza at noon. I'll treat you to a meal and introduce you to some beauties. Luo Nan was a bit stupefied by Amoya's unpredictable attitude. But he soon recalled that this was Amoya's usual trick. He laughed and was about to retort when Amoya said, "Oh right. Don't come too early. Our practice venue is rented until 2 o'clock. We'll be racing against time. There's really a show? What do you think? I'll contact you at noon." I'm hanging up. Then the call was cut off. Luo Nan stood at the school gate and sighed after a while. Today's plan was doomed to fail. He spoke to Chinikuan and rode a security vehicle to the municipal plaza. It was a bit early to go over, but his previous plan had been destroyed. He didn't know what to do for a time. Luo Nan's consciousness shifted to Ink's location in the car and locked onto Peony. If Peony were to follow the procession, they would most likely reach the municipal plaza. For safety's sake, he needed to maintain a distance from her. But what in the world was this sister doing? She was stirring up a storm in the procession just a moment ago, but she immediately left the procession after receiving a phone call. Luo Nan ran to a relatively sparse location with a few flashes of light. Ink followed him out of habit. Peony displayed her extraordinary keenness once more. You're here again? How did she know that I just left for a while? Luo Nan was a bit stupefied. He replied, what are you going back and forth for? Peony stood in the shadow of a tall building, far away from the clamor of the crowd. She smiled as she looked at the surging stream of people. Fulfilling everyone's wishes. For them, this level of achievement was enough. In any case, most of them didn't want to do anything. Even if some of them were like this, they didn't have enough awareness to pay the price. It's not even as good as your attitude towards work. Even? That wasn't a good word at all. Peony put on her leather jacket again and laughed happily. Including me, I'm not as good as you, alright? That's why it's good to participate. It's more valuable to work with you. Thank you for thinking highly of me, but now it's my turn. When you said you have something to do, are you referring to watching the parade with me? Go to the municipal square on the way. Municipal square? Where are you going? You're right. That place will be a good place soon. The city government will cry if they hear this. As long as it's meaningful to us. This is indeed a good opportunity. Luo Nan was suddenly unable to keep up with Peony's train of thought. Opportunity? What opportunity? Peony pulled her hair back into a ponytail. She bit a rubber band in her mouth and cast a sidelong glance at Ink. It looks like I overestimated you, Mr. Partner. Luo Nan didn't care about Peony's evaluation. He knew early on that this Miss Peony could toss him in the dust in terms of planning and scheming. She was just stating the facts. His attitude was upright and very calm. You don't need to evaluate my thinking ability. You just need to provide the conditions for me to reveal my search and sensing ability. I believe that this is the meaning of us being partners. Oh, that makes sense. Peony really did seriously consider this for a moment. Then she nodded. That's what the firm told me in the beginning. How could I forget? I'm sorry. Maybe I drank too much last night. Of course, it's more likely that you haven't fulfilled your duties during this time, giving me some sort of misconception. Maybe. Peony tidied up her ponytail and stepped on the high heels on her feet. I need to change this too. But let me first explain the so-called opportunity. Since we're going to the municipal square, as long as it's not a particularly exhausting matter, we can completely handle the related search work. After all, this is an opportunity to collect sufficient samples. Samples? That's right. 3 samples. It's just like what's described in the records of the operation. After this period of incubation, the probability of a third-stage mutant infection appearing has already reached a statistically significant significance. Speak in human terms. In other words, due to the invasion of this batch of mutants, the ecosphere of Xia City has already received serious contamination. Affected by this, it's very likely that a primitive mutant has already appeared by our side. Its original form might be a rat, a wild dog, a crow, or even a person. But in the end, it will become a monster with an intense desire for destruction and an instinct for reproduction. And then? The municipal government is still sealing off the information. Then a biohazard crisis type of blockbuster will play out in Xia City. When that time comes, we definitely won't be able to get the follow-up payment. The firm's reputation will pretty much be wiped clean. I'll lose my job, and my partner will probably have to change employers. Of course, this is the worst-case scenario. Hee, this demonstration is truly righteous. It's also our opportunity. Peony pointed at the gradually departing procession. Look, a procession like this can be seen on over half the streets of the city. There are a total of 954,000 or so registered university students in the Xia City region. They come from over 70 institutions of higher learning. 4 major districts are spread throughout the north, south, east, and west of the city. The number of people participating in the demonstration is over 100,000. And if we include those fellows who join in the fun, the police and civil servants who are responsible for maintaining order, the merchants who seize business opportunities, and service personnel, etc., the number of people involved will certainly exceed 200,000. Oh right, there's still a performance tonight. Singers, famous actors, popular boy and girl groups, virtual idols, and so on. By the peak hour of the evening, the number of people gathered within a 5-kilometer radius of the municipal plaza will be between 300 and 500,000 people. Do you believe it or not? Luo Nan didn't respond. He couldn't help but think about what a canned sardine crowd of 500,000 people would look like. At that time, the residents of every corner of Xia City will appear in the plaza. A sampling rate calculated from the total population of 90 million people in the main city district of Xia City is quite reasonable, whether it's from a sociological or biological perspective. Luo Nan had a general idea, but he still needed to confirm it. What do you mean? You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.